Court order. The new governor Mukhtar also insisted that he had been sworn in validly.
There is one COG is trying to install, and that is not implemented because there is a governor in office. And the county can't have two governors at a go. He is in Eldoret, a respected person who has been in power for quite some time. But when he is ejected, I have still the respect for him. But when he misbehaves, he should be disciplined.
National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi has lined up a series of tours in 9 counties to bolster his message of unity ahead of 2022. Muturi is keen on tapping on his network of MPs, banking on the working relationship he has built with them for the years he's been at the helm. During the weekend, the Speaker will be in Narok, where leaders have planned, among other activities, to recognize him as a Maasai elder. And finally, a Nairobi court has set July 27th as the date to deliver the findings of its inquest into the death of 29 people at Nakuru downtown supermarket 12 years ago. Milimani Chief Magistrate Francis Ndai was supposed to deliver the findings yesterday, but they were not ready. 5 Nakumatt employees were among the 29 who died during the 2009 fire. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
Starting to build up already on Mombasa Road this morning, heading out into the city centre, but it doesn't look too terrible right now. We're also seeing that traffic has built up on Kiambu Road a little bit, trying to connect with the Thika Superhighway. Not too terrible. Let's see what this Thursday will look like as we get to the close of the week. Certain things still happening in terms of the closure of parts of the Museum Hill ramp, or actually the whole of the Museum Hill ramp, and then coming out parts of Huru Highway, shutting down traffic essentially in those areas. Other routes have been used, and we found out what those are. Let's see what they look like through the course of the morning. Our aim is to keep things moving this morning and keeping you sane at the same time. So let's see if we can do that. KFS tells us that 3 ferries up for service this morning. Don't forget, *712# is how you pay your ferry toll. Don't use cash because you won't be able to go through. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch with us this morning. Text us on 40127. And let's do the thing today.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Yes, it is. It's the first day of July 2021. Happy New Month. Wherever you are, happy new financial year as well for those who work in government.
Yes. Merry tidings and all good things.
Salaries have been paid?
Whose?
Gava.
Government people.
Eh.
Those ones, as long as you have to clarify which government. National government or county government?
Yes, national is different.
Yes.
Has county received its money?
County, they received the money for up to April.
Yes.
Governor said we're going to pay salary arrears. Now, whether that covers, whether they'll be left with something small to cover until end of June, that is something else.
It's unconstitutional. It is reminiscent of what national government used to do to local authorities.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Completely. Completely.
Unfortunately.
Starved of cash. So we have finished an entire financial year, and the money that was supposed to have gone to the county governments in accordance with the law did not go to the county governments.
What do you do when it's the national executive undermining the law? Because this matter has been taken to court. Court has pronounced itself on this issue of the transfers. But what do you do when you have impunity sitting in government? Because that's what it is.
Citizens remind the government who they are.
Bas.
That's the only way.
That is true. That is true.
That's the only way. We'll have conversations as we gear up towards 2022. We can see alignments, realignments. But one thing that is really, really important to look at is elections and the credibility of those elections. So the IEBC is reported to have said they are not ready for the election. That is one report. Other reports saying, well, yeah, we're ready. We can do it even today. Candidates lining themselves up. Citizens saying, kujeni, muone. Are we going to have credible elections next year? And then what's the definition of free, fair, and credible? We'll have a conversation with a reputable observer group in the country, and they'll be joining us at 8 o'clock. We'll have other conversations as well. But let's start with COVID-19 because it's in the country.
You know, you didn't even say good morning to each other.
Oh, yeah.
You just went off as if
We
slept
sleep in
here.
the same house.
Oh, yeah.
No, my father would
It's
tell you
because
that
I was
you
heading
just wake
there,
up
and then
live
Wanjiro
like a goat.
distracted me with asking about salaries.
First internalize that one.
Sheesh.
Yeah, and you wake up and
My father said, you don't just wake up and leave the house. Like, it's only goat that stands up and goes.
And just goes. You have to say hello to people.
Abrahamine, come on.
How are you,
How
Nduoko?
did you sleep? Where you slept? Are
Yeah.
they okay there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Where
How
you
are
slept, are they
Good
okay?
morning. They're fine.
Did you leave them asleep or awake?
Half.
Okay. Wanjiro, how are you?
I'm very well.
Good to see you again this morning.
Happy to be here.
Have you on the show?
Thank you.
Yes, I'm also fine. Thank you for
Oh
not
yes,
asking.
yes. We need to ask. And your people,
My people are fine.
they were awake or asleep?
They were asleep when I left,
Yes.
but they were breathing, so they were
Oh,
fine.
that's good.
Yes.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah, yes. So, okay. Preliminaries done.
Now,
Tick.
First
We
order
are
of
not
business.
We are not goods.
Yes.
Officially.
They're officially not good. Good. Okay, so let's look at COVID-19 in numbers around the world. We're still, hovering over that 182 million number. The hope is that we will not get to 200 million anytime soon, because that would be now a serious number. Having seen 200 million people affected with one thing on the globe is a big deal. Almost 4 million deaths now from COVID-19, 3,962,799 cases of death around the world. We're also looking at the US, India, and Brazil with the highest numbers. Again, the top 10 countries in the world make up 80% of the COVID cases globally. So that in itself is a big deal. Bringing things closer home, 558 cases recorded yesterday. Kenya's positivity rate is at 8.8%. This is from a sample size of 6,357. Of course, again, still looking at the fact that it's not giving the true picture of the COVID footprint in the country. How many more people could have it? How many more people on a particular day could have symptoms of COVID and then having been tested found to be positive? So that's what we're looking at now. Vaccines are still being administered, and with the promise of 10 million coming in by August, and hopefully that the entire adult population will be vaccinated by next year. Let's look at what happens with that. But those are the numbers that we're looking at now. South Africa is looking to bridge its vaccine gap. How are they looking at that? Still, Ramaphosa's government has been forced to tighten lockdown restrictions in a bid to contain a third wave of the coronavirus. South Africa now is going through a third wave. And they have vaccinated as well, less than 2% of the population, with a program that started in February. So they're really looking at how they're going to be able to do that. Millions of people have been left vulnerable to infection. The interesting thing is that they can't give a reason as to why vaccinations are not happening. Do they have them? Yes, they do. Are people not, is the uptake slow? Yes, it is. The reasons as to why this is, they can't seem to say.
Are the people saying?
You expect more from South Africa?
Yeah. And the thing is that the vaccines are there. They're not struggling. They're not struggling to say, they'll come
acquire.
in August, they'll
They
come
have
in
them.
October, they'll come in December. They have a good number.
The health system has frozen.
Why are people not going for the vaccine?
This is a question, and right now they're in a third wave.
Are people saying why they're not going for the vaccine?
No, not
So,
really.
so are the vaccines distributed and available? Is it uptake
It's uptake.
or is it distribution?
It's uptake, but what they're saying is that they've been able to distribute, and right now they're only able. Right now they're getting to the place where they can vaccinate 100,000 people in a day, but it has not happened. They're able to currently vaccinate 100,000 people daily, but they're not doing that. Only 2.7 million people out of 59 million have been vaccinated to date from February.
Wow.
How many?
2.7 million.
2%.
From February.
Yes, from February to date, only 2.7 million people have been vaccinated.
That one is hard to understand.
Yeah. So they're also concerned. See, this is the thing. They're concerned about the spread of the Delta variant because it's now in South Africa, and they're going into a third lockdown. So it is kind of like this bubbly space where we're not quite sure. Then why not insist then on vaccinating your people? Because you have them. It's not a matter that we can't get. They have them.
And they were able to enforce a lockdown so they can enforce the uptake. You know, vaccine passports kind of scenario. If you don't get your chanjo, then you're not eligible. Interesting.
Maybe they don't want to
Sad.
get there. They still want it to be personal choice.
They have a very strong human rights
They do.
context.
They're political
You've
parties.
got to let it be personal choice. You choose to come and get the vaccine, but then a lot of communication needs to happen on why the vaccine is good.
And I think that's where the vacuum is right now. The main opposition, what they're calling the Democratic Alliance, condemned the government's sluggishness, rather has called the government sluggish, saying the government is definitely going to fail of meeting its target of vaccinating 40 million people by the end of the year. Well, definitely, from all indications, if they're going this way, they're never going to vaccinate 40 million people at this rate.
Wow.
The second biggest opposition party, Economic Freedom Fighters, condemned and it called the utter failure of the government to vaccinate even 1 million people in the space of over a year. And they're demanding for, the Russian and Chinese vaccines in addition to the Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson that are already in use in the country.
So South Africa has Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer
Yes.
and some bit of AstraZeneca as well.
But you see, in this case, it's not that they don't have. They have.
And they had an issue with the AstraZeneca at the outset,
Yes.
but they've got the Pfizer, which
Yes.
is the... This is amazing.
It's-
This has been a government that's been quite effective on all other fronts. So this doesn't make sense. And then we're not hearing where the gap is.
Exactly.
And then, of course, the issue becomes politicized. Political party against opposition and incumbents.
That's what we're looking at. But it seems to be the case across the continent. Namibia, DRC, Uganda, also witnessing a surge in cases. Yoweri Museveni called out vaccine selfishness in the world. They are not able to get enough in terms of what they need, and has called on Africans to be self-sufficient. Says there's no reason why we should not be able to produce vaccines here for ourselves. If we have the genetic makeup of the vaccine, we should be able to do it. 5 countries are involved in the production of vaccines. Tunisia and Morocco have companies that can package and label. Meanwhile, South Africa itself, Egypt and Senegal can fill and finish. They can do this, which entails big pharmaceutical companies using third parties to fill and prepare vials for distribution. Less than 1% of the continent's 1.3 billion people have been vaccinated.
Okay.
Yeah. Inequality is real, man.
And it's actually been laid bare during this time with how the Western countries have basically just behaved when
Italy
it
is
comes
masks off.
already because we
Italy.
have vaccinated ourselves.
You remember those pictures?
Yes.
They are masks off.
Yep.
Man.
16 minutes after 6, let's take a break and take a look at the weather. We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you online? Say hello and tell us where you are. We'll be saying hello to you shortly. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, with Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Wajiro Gekonyo. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hello.
Hello.
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial star 550 star 1 hash to read the standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul,
Right,
and
we're
nostalgia.
looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today at 14. Light rain expected later, going to highs of 24 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions at 12 in Nyeri, highs of 22. We'll see highs of 25 in a cloudy Nakuru at 13 at the moment. It's also 13 and mostly cloudy in Eldoret, highs of 22 and lows of 11. 27 will be the high in Kisumu, where it's clear at 19. It's clear in Kakamega at 17, highs of 26, lows of 14. And 22 will be the low in Mombasa, where it's partly cloudy. It'll go to highs of 29. We're looking at partly cloudy conditions at 23 in Malindi, highs of 28 and lows of 24. 26 will be the high in Kampala, where it's mostly clear at 17. It'll come down to lows of 15. Mostly clear conditions at 21 in Dar es Salaam, highs of 30 and lows of 21. 19 will be the high in Johannesburg. It's clear at 11. Come down to a chilly low of 4. 25 will be the low in Lagos, where it's raining this morning at 26, highs of 30. 30 will also be the high in Kinshasa. It's partly cloudy at 21. We're looking at 26 and partly sunny conditions in Beijing, out east, highs of 30 and lows of 21. Cloudy conditions in Paris at 14. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 22. 22 will also be the highs in London. It's mostly cloudy at 14 and 24 degrees, mostly clear conditions in a very warm New York. Highs of 35 and lows of 24.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Right.
FM,
Thank you,
Nairobi.
6. Time for us to acknowledge people who are online this morning. Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Molly says good morning. Dando, well represented. Dandora, right? Okay. David Kiare wa Subukia says leo show inatetemesha Subukia kahiga yote. Okay. Ondicho says, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Getting you loud and clear from Kamtutsi. Nicholas Lagat says, happy new month to Kericho's tuned in. Evans K. Vance says, good morning. Good morning, guys. And that's from Embakasi. And that is Phil Collins. Chuthimanwa Nanyuki is tuned. And Clemo Timboroa Massive. Abute Water says, good morning. And Beta Ashley's tuned in from Machakos. Lucy Tambo from Kilifi County. And Farista Muganda says, good morning from Ebubere Mumias, Nikondani and Pango. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Kilamutu. On this first day of July 2021, today's proverb, anayetaka hachoki, hata akichoka keshapata. Anayetaka hachoki, hata akichoka keshapata.
Keshapata.
Yes.
Say it again, just one more time. I think I can get it.
Anayetaka hachoki,
One who wants or looks for something doesn't get tired.
hata akichoka keshapata.
Even if they get tired, they'll get it. Huh? Even if they get tired,
Keshapata.
tomorrow they'll get it. They will get it.
Ashapata.
They will. They already have it. Okay.
One who
close.
craves something does not get tired. And if they show signs of getting tired, then they already got it.
Okay. Okay, I was close.
Persistence pays.
Yes, persistence pays. That's the day's
Usichoke.
proverb. Usichoke. Wala
I like that.
usitishike.
I like that. We need that in this country. That's the spirit.
That's the spirit.
Tusichoke, democracy, equality, accountability.
Yes.
Tutazipata.
Let's not get fatigue. As we take a look at the papers, you can access the Standard e-paper directly on your phone through your telephone line. If you have a telephone line, please dial star 550 star 1 hash for the Standard e-paper at 20 shillings daily. 20 bob daily on your telecom line, star 550 star 1 hash. If you want the Nairobian e-paper daily for 20 bob daily, 550 2 hash. And the Standard e-paper magazine pullout, it's star 550 star 3 hash. And magazine pullouts are 5 bob daily. This amount is charged directly from your airtime, and it's renewable every day. Let's take a look at the headlines then. Now that we are all together here.
Now that we're all together, we are not the promoters. I don't know how many times we heard this particular phrase yesterday while looking at watching the proceedings. But we are actually not the proposers or promoters, rather, of the BBI. Neither are we the initiators. We are not the proposers of the BBI, Uhuru and Raila say. And on the front page of the Standard, brains behind the BBI initiative are Suna East MP Junet Mohammed and former Dagoretti MP Dennis Waweru, and not the president and the former prime minister, the court told as appeal hearings enter day 3. On The Nation as well, the parties which successfully petitioned High Court to nullify the BBA law reviews plan will defend their position. The arguments: the promoters of the BBI made a final push in their bid to overturn the ruling by the High Court, which derailed the constitutional amendment campaign. Lawyers' arguments was that President Kenyatta had been condemned unheard, and that contrary to the High Court's finding, the popular initiative had been started by 2 politicians and not the head of state. Over and over and over again, it actually is not us. And here we are being condemned for something that essentially we did not do. And if that then is the bane of how this initiative was stopped, then it holds no water, is essentially what they were saying. If we as the 2 individuals are being held or seen as guilty for doing this, then this case has no water. It holds nothing, because we're actually not the ones who put it together. They're not. Even when they were asked, how did the BBI
So
come
popular
about?
initiative.
Because of the handshake.
So it's popular because
Who put the handshake?
Popular initiative is because they are Dennis Waweru and
Yes.
Junet Mohammed.
Not us.
Not the president and head of state.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And the reason why you quashed this case
Is you're saying
because
this
you
is a
said the
state
president
project.
acted out of turn. Well, then, I mean, if that's the case, then why are we here?
maybe they're trying to mystify the court or, mask the reality in front of the court. All these are valid strategies in court. Let them do their bit. Let us hope the court sticks to the facts. And
You have seen the albino giraffe. Is it a giraffe or is it not?
Of course, it's a
The
giraffe.
giraffe, no.
Is it?
Yes. It's a giraffe. Kwani a giraffe is marked by the stripes, by the spots.
What marks it?
The
Other things, the long neck, its height, its
It's
long
acacias.
legs, its tongue that can pull leaves from thickly thorns and
Yes.
branches. It's like the albino tiger. Does it stop it from being a tiger?
Tiger.
It does not.
No, yeah. So what's the
You
point
shall know
here?
a leopard by its spots.
You
So
should
if
have
it
talked
doesn't
about
have-
a leopard.
You should have
If
said
it-
leopard.
So if it doesn't,
You said
so
giraffe.
if you came across a leopard that doesn't have spots,
Then it's a jaguar.
It's a jaguar. But a giraffe that doesn't have spots is not an elephant.
not an
a
You're on
zebra that
very
doesn't have
short
stripes
thing
is a
this morning,
donkey.
Wajiro. What?
A zebra that doesn't have stripes is a donkey.
It could be. Or a horse.
Or a horse.
So
Or a jackass.
BBI that doesn't have the president and Rao
Is a suggestion.
is a waste of taxpayers' money. Is also
It
a
could
waste.
be a horse.
Is also a waste of taxpayers' money. Doesn't make a difference.
If it is
You see,
something,
what-
it is
what-
These
something.
lawyers are overpaid.
What I see
think
here,
that
though-
we are sure of.
I mean,
they're
clearly.
overpaid.
I mean, just throwing a lot of money.
Technicalities,
at this.
right?
Hey.
So, if the president cannot initiate
Yes.
a popular initiative, can a member of parliament initiate a popular initiative?
Thank you.
Anybody can.
Thank you. Well, what the court said is that the popular initiative is the preserve of the citizen, not of, well, I'm trying to think what the exact wording was, but not of elected
The
leaders,
elected
not
leaders.
the head of state, not a state officer,
Okay. Yes,
not
a state
politicians.
Even
not
a judge
publics-
cannot.
Even a judge, even a public servant
Not state
cannot.
officer.
You can, I can. So what the court did is they put back into the hands of the citizen the power to amend the constitution through the popular initiative.
Yeah.
So the argument that we are all citizens, we are all part of, it ignores that there's a schedule, there's a section in the constitution that outlines these officers and defines their roles. And a state officer, an MP is a state officer, and they can't now define, it doesn't mean they're not citizens.
I think
But-
the argument that's also being presented now by these lawyers is there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that a state officer cannot initiate.
Let them try their luck.
And also, the whole argument that, a state officer cannot initiate, the president cannot initiate because he has access to parliament and he can go through the parliamentary route. A member of parliament can go through the parliamentary route. They also say even a citizen has access to parliament.
Well,
Same way citizens are able to lobby and get their, bills brought into parliament because of citizens pushing through the representative to take a bill to parliament. It's the same way Wanjiru Gekonyo can propose constitutional amendments through the parliamentary route, through your member of parliament.
I think the point being made here is that the Constitution outlines the powers of the head of state, of state officers, and of public officers. And that those powers are separate. And if you think about sovereignty, where is sovereignty vested? And there's an order in which it's vested. And what they're saying is that this direct sovereignty of the people can be exercised through popular petition.
Directly,
And actually,
without having to
actually
go
they
through.
talk about the direct constituent power versus the representative constituent power. So, and that demarcation is made so clearly. So, this argument to me is very strange. You'd have expected them to pick precedents from other jurisdictions to come and challenge what the court articulated, because the direct constituent power cannot be mistaken for anything else. And it sounds to me like people have to have to do their job, have to do our job, have to do something, and they can muddy the issues, they can try and be creative, entertain the court, that's the option.
This one is quite entertaining.
It is.
Because that's one thing that I saw. If you argue that this is not a president's initiative, so that you can run away from the fact that, maybe the president acted out of turn or usurped a process that he should not be using, then can a member of parliament initiate a popular initiative? Because Junet is a sitting member of parliament. In fact, he's in the leadership of parliament, recognized as such.
This actually brings to mind what Waikwa said, that the High Court ruling was very watertight. It was very clear, very well supported, very well articulated. And this doesn't sound like an argument. It sounds like they're trying to weasel out. But again, the courts will decide whether the direct constituent power and the representative power can be muddied with this kind of arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your case about the doctrine of basic structure,
Yeah.
Senior Counsel and MP Otiende Amolo said, the court said there's a basic structure. But then the court did not say, where is that basic structure? What is that basic structure? So what is this court telling us? His argument is, even if it was to be said the basic structure doctrine applies, how did the Superior Court treat it? They left it hanging and in utter confusion. The court found that basic structure applies, but it does not come out and say where it applies.
Even though the Constitution, again, is very clear on that, because there's Article 255, I think, that outlines the sections that cannot be amended outside of a referendum. And so, the interpretation of that section is that these are fundamental pillars of the Constitution that require to then be taken to referendum. So,
But did the judgment of the court actually agree that those are what form the basic structure? Or did the court basically say, yes, we agree that a constitution has a basic structure?
No, I think the court did take its time to highlight the sections that constitute the basic structure. So I do not understand what further interpretation Otiende Amolo is seeking. And maybe this, I don't know what room there is for us to put in a call to Waikwa Nyoike to clarify and illuminate some of these things. Or do we wait to hear what comes out?
Yes, let's see what also now the defense team starts to say in response to all these things that have been put forth. 28 minutes to 7, time for us to take a break. Let's take a look at traffic. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Remember to check out this website on a daily basis because many jobs are posted here, listed by various companies that are looking for employees such as yourself. Who is this? Airtel Kenya is looking for CS core roaming. What are those? Are those jobs? SME, CS core roaming and IDD.
We can safely say we're not eligible for those jobs because we don't understand what that means.
Schneider Electric is looking for a finance controller. EduLink International College is looking for an assistant lecturer. Futterwave is looking for a product compliance manager. And very many other jobs as well that have been listed on jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. If you don't find a job that suits you today, just subscribe and you will receive an SMS or email alert whenever a job that suits you is listed. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Time for a break.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here. 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group.
Nothing too crazy being reported at the moment. We just know that it already started to build up on Mombasa Road, right around Cabanas heading outbound. We're likely to see the traffic in this particular area pick up later on during the morning as the construction now kicks into full gear. Coming off Langata Road doesn't look too bad, where there was a nightmare yesterday. Thika Road, we already see the build-up on Kiambu Road, now trying to join on the Thika Superhighway, but I don't think we're going to see much craziness, at least not just for now. When we do get into traffic, I'll be right here to let you know what it's looking like. Talk to us as well. Are you stuck somewhere? Or do you find a good route that is easy street, basically, for you to get in and out of the city? Let us know. The bypass is also looking pretty good right now. Southern, great. Eastern as well. North Airport Road, headed out in that direction. Not too bad right now either. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE. You can text on 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings. What are you looking at, Wanjiru?
Well, it's our fiscal consolidation progress report. Continuing saga around IMF conditionalities, and there are two interesting stories. One is KEMSA, as expected, have not disappointed us.
Deadline came, deadline passed.
Business as usual.
Right.
The list of the COVID millionaire businesses has not been published. as the government promised it would be. Despite, as you recall, the beneficial ownership requirements that were published by government in January.
Which
The
were
deadline,
extended to what, June, eh?
yes, I think extended to June, because at the time it was like a 2-month
Yeah, it
deadline.
was too
and it
short
was
and just...
Now, these are people who have
Wasting our
already
time.
procured, not supplied or whatever, they've taken the money, and we still do not have the list of names. And this is despite a new board being put in place, despite the commitments of Treasury. So let's watch this space. Related to that, because IMF is in town, and you know, my thinking is that it's a big crime or omission by Parliament and the Treasury in the reading of the budget and in the way they are handling the fiscal consolidation program, not to be very upfront about it. Because they signed this agreement and then they act as though, well, it's business as usual. It's not. Because again, you see on page 8 of the Standard, there's a spike in food and fuel. The spike in food and fuel prices pushes cost of living to a 26-month high. So a sharp increase in prices of fuel and foodstuffs have pushed up the cost of living to a 26-month high. Food and fuel take up a huge chunk of people's income contribution. And this is due to the increase, additional 37.60 for a litre of petrol added in June. And you remember this was because of the push by the IMF. So the price of bread has particularly been inching upwards in the face of increased cost of wheat.
Yep.
And it is not all smooth sailing for Kenyans after MPs decided to increase excise duty on airtime, the single largest consumer item in the typical Kenyan shopping basket. So what they did over the finance bill,
Yep.
because they didn't want to incur the wrath of the public by increasing the cost of bread and other consumables, they went for...
Like we said, MPs, that whole report was erroneous. The headlines were erroneous, saying that MPs have shut down. It was just coming out in one way or the other. Now, the beef that I have again with IMF rears its head again here.
Yes.
Look, why did people wanted to have fuel at zero VAT? IMF pushed,
Yes.
arm twisted. They said, put back VAT. That's how you're going to get your revenue. Members of Parliament pushed back. They got to a level and agreed at half, 8%. The push has been getting back to 16%. Push has been get back, start tax more on the people that you're taxing. So they have an issue, yes, with our government and lack of creativity on how to expand the tax bracket and how to bring more people into the tax bracket and how all those things. But I also have an issue with this one institution being able to arm twist a government that strongly. One institution, it's a preferred lender. Why? Because it's the cheapest. It's the cheapest and most accessible because it brings in contribution from over 160 member countries. And now here you are, you decide, okay, because you are definitely going to come to me, these are my conditions. I'm saying let's reset how we negotiate. Let's reset how we engage with such institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions. That such an agreement should go through, like Parliament must discuss the agreements and agree. And IMF cannot come with the conditions and they're set in stone and say, this is how you go.
In fact,
we were having a conversation yesterday. Was it yesterday that we had a conversation on cooperatives?
Yes.
And the impact of the structural adjustment programs on agriculture.
Exactly. You know, it was, mind-blowing, very disturbing what Professor told us yesterday, not forgetting that the structural adjustment programs also killed the agriculture extension program.
Not just that.
Is only beginning to recover under the counties.
Not just that. Just the impact of those SAPs on agriculture.
Yes.
Agriculture was, okay, it was limping, it was all, but it was organized. So, first, the cooperative movement that was very well organizing agriculture so that farmers can access market, can access inputs better, killed because don't support cooperatives. The information, access to information by a farmer. What do I plant now? How do I test my soil? What is good now? All that agricultural extension services killed. Access to finance by farmers.
Yes.
Right? Agricultural Finance Corporation killed. Access to inputs, seeds, or even breeding for those who are in livestock. Agricultural Development Corporation, killed. Access to, what else? Markets. Kenya Farmers Association, killed. All those things died because some guy somewhere with an Ivy League degree sat in a boardroom and decided this is what's going to be the policy for all these poor countries, without necessarily tweaking it and understanding what are your unique circumstances.
You've hit it on the head. And the sad thing is that it's happening again. The proposals of the present fiscal consolidation program are the same as the 90s.
Yeah.
They've just renamed them.
It's a new name.
They've just renamed them. And one of the big problems is that what the IMF have kind of rubber stamped or turned a blind eye or are supporting the idea that, right now the government has invested a lot in infrastructure. We Kenyans are employed in labor intensive, in agriculture.
Yeah.
But the investments are going into infrastructure. So this immediately is a misnomer. So you borrow money, put it into roads, put it into rail, expensive models that aren't sustainable. They're not even county level roads where the technology is bought internally. It's high expensive roads where external providers come. They come with their technology, they come with their engineers.
And they leave.
So you're exporting all that money. And the money you've used to build those roads is then borrowed money in foreign currency.
Yeah.
So you actually withdraw money from the local economy to go and pay. We are supporting the economies of China and all those other providers, while our farmers are being squeezed. Now, the IMF fiscal consolidation program leaves that intact. They do, actually their proposals are that continue with that, but let us reduce cost of government, let's freeze salaries, and let's look at scaling down. So they're
let's
dealing.
tax more.
Let's tax more. And tax is one of their big things.
Yeah.
So the fiscal consolidation program, like you said, unfortunately, was signed between Treasury and the IMF. That's unconstitutional. If you look at the practice in other countries, because we were looking at examples of when Japan or European countries, the practice is that the fiscal consolidation program is subjected to public participation. You go out and you tell people, by the way, guys, we're in trouble. These are our proposals. And this is important because when you need ownership of the resolutions that are made, those resolutions also have to support the growth of the country.
Yeah.
So that when this administration transits, because it will, the fiscal consolidation program will still be on.
Yep.
So if there is no ownership, it means the incoming government can just come and say, what the heck? We're not part of this thing.
Yeah.
So whatever measures they've started to implement will then...
Those ones are frozen and they start fresh.
So the IMF should have insisted, we want to see a participatory process. They haven't.
They don't do that because they don't really care.
That's the thing. It's not in their interest. They don't really care if you want to look at it as it is like that. They're not really bothered about what happens to the grass.
Exactly.
Right now.
And the
They're
grass
not really
needs to
bothered.
rise up now. The grass needs... The way Kenyans were speaking directly to the IMF, what were they saying?
Exactly.
They were not only just saying, don't give our government money. They were basically saying, don't come with your conditions. We know you. You've been here before. We know you.
And you messed us up, and
You
to
messed us
this
up.
date we are suffering
And
from that.
they have never even sat back and said, you know what, guys, actually we acknowledge that what we did in the 80s and 90s in these poor countries
Was wrong.
messed up these countries.
Never going to.
They have never even acknowledged that.
They won't.
In fact, there's increasing talk about IMF being a predatory lender, because IMF, the financiers of the IMF, these guys with huge amounts that need to come into these countries and
Yep.
get their footprint,
Yep.
are competing with China. China, which is now celebrating, is it 100 years of the Communist Party, and have told the world, we will no longer be bullied.
Yep.
Yani, they are coming with their money and their bad policies and their lack of democracy, and they are going to push it. So they are afraid that China is taking over.
But because
And their way to come into a country like Kenya is to say, we won't ask any questions, just take the money.
Yeah.
Whereas they should be asking questions like, why are you putting money into projects that have have not gone through a due process. Why are you taking a fiscal consolidation program without public participation?
I think you must also look at it from this angle as well, is that if they do not have a situation where countries who need help are constantly in a depressed state, their position or their validity and their power wanes.
Their significance.
Their significance is not there anymore. They need countries to be in a depressed state in order for them to continue being valid. And if you look at it like that, then you will understand why they're not going to bother to come and ask you then, how are things really going? Can you please make sure that you put 1, 2, 3 ducks in a row? Can you make sure that there's public participation? Because that is not what they are concerned with.
And I'll go even further to say, because I totally agree with you, and I hope that members of parliament, they're usually not up this early, get to hear these sentiments, because they're selling our sovereignty. If you listen to members of parliament on the debt issue, they've been trying to push back. And on several occasions, they say, but the Treasury lied to us. The Treasury gave us the wrong information. So there's a very guilty party here, which is Treasury, that is misrepresenting issues. Do they know? Well, it doesn't matter whether they know, but they're misrepresenting, have given poor solutions and accepted poor solutions and have then sold those to Parliament, misrepresenting issues. There's then Parliament that complains, but is always convinced to increase the debt ceiling. Now Treasury is saying scrap the debt ceiling altogether. So Treasury complains, even if you look at the reports, they are saying this isn't sustainable. Stop borrowing here, stop doing that. You lied to us, but they are not doing anything.
Treasury, our parliament is as guilty as the Treasury in terms of our members of parliament. What they do is they take a report from the Parliamentary Budget Office, which does its work. It looks at what has been presented to it. It gives that report to members of parliament. Now, so that members of parliament will never be asked, but why did you ignore the advice of the Parliamentary Budget Office? They include it in their reports. Yeah. They just say, the Treasury should tell us, Treasury should open up the debt register, Treasury should do this, and the other. We are questioning why did this happen, and then they go ahead and vote. That tells you all they were doing is playing PR. There's a report from the Parliamentary Budget Office that we need to consider in our decision. They include it in their report, and then bottom line, conclusion, let's vote yes.
Yeah. So that the headlines will say this was the debate,
but
the ultimate is they gave it a... So what do we do? Do we go for, there's a High Court ruling that Parliament should be dissolved? What do we do with a Parliament that doesn't do its job when Kenyans are really... the economy is being destroyed against the advice, like you said, of the Parliamentary Budget Office. And like you said, the grass
is the one that's suffering all the time. The grass needs to rise up. The grass needs to rise up to its own government and say, look, it doesn't matter whether you're getting money from China, if China is willing to give you the money. However, we need to understand what you're going to do with that money. Because if the citizens were involved, by the way, China giving us money without asking questions, it is our job to ask the questions of our government. What do you want to do? Because that is budgeted. If we participate in budgeting and saying, no way, money comes, this is what we want to see done, China will give us money nicely. And these IMF guys with their big degrees can stop. Let's take a break. 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. Those are conversations that we're having, and all the time as we have all these conversations, it reminds us of the real pandemic in this country, which is corruption. Because there's corruption in very many ways. There's corruption of big corruption, the KEMSA billionaires, and then there's corruption like you're seeing in your elected leader not doing what they're supposed to do deliberately and knowing full well the consequences and what you're going to suffer. That's corruption.
It is.
That's corruption in many ways.
Usaliti.
Kabisa.
Usaliti.
10 minutes to 7. Good morning.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Kubash Hood Edition is here, and we are all about the youth. They are young, energetic, ambitious, and they are the future. Kubash Hood Edition is all about creating brighter futures for young people, empowering them from issues mental health, peer pressure, innovation, and even parenting. Our show gives young people the practical and insightful support they need. From different segments from dance battles, shout-outs, artist of the week, to even Gava Corner. Kubash Hood Edition. We help them in building their confidence and motivation so they can continue to dream big. Kubash Hood Edition, coming to a hood near you. Live on KTN Home every Saturday 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
8 minutes.
94.4 Spice.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues. So yesterday, the Fred Matiang'i, the Cabinet Secretary for, what is it? Interior and Coordination of National Government, who is also the chairman of the Cabinet Committee on everything else, basically just makes him the Prime Minister, said that the government is ready for next year's elections in terms of the security side. The security side of government,
We're ready.
we are ready. This time, the security sector is more prepared than it was in 2013 and 2017. He said he was making the remarks yesterday during the launch of the 2020-2025 strategic plan for the National Cohesion and Integration Commission in Nairobi. He said, "We have sufficient laws and solid institutions ready to work collaboratively with other organizations and ensure that we go through this period peacefully." This strategic plan coincides with plans by other government institutions ahead of the general election. 2 weeks ago, a top security meeting held in Nairobi brought together regional and county commissioners from all counties, where the administrators were told to start preparing for next year's poll. Now, 2 things here. One is government saying, in terms of us being prepared, we've already brought together the entire structure of the national government, and we've said, let's start working towards next year's poll. We are ready. Security-wise, we are ready. That is one. Then there is a National Cohesion and Integration Commission coming up with a new plan for 2020-2025. What was the other plan? What was the success and the challenges of the previous plan in implementation of that plan? Do we feel the effect of NCIC since it was established? First as an Agenda 4 commission and then entrenched in the Constitution. Have you felt the impact of the Integration and Cohesion Commission?
Okay. First of all, it's a problem when you talk about national cohesion integration. First of all, the way the article is written may have skewed the conversation because the way it comes out is that that national integration and cohesion is about security. That's the way the article reads. So one, it could be misleading, but it could also be a reflection of the way government looks at things, because if you look at the budget last year, this year, the allocations to into interior security have really gone up. So government is saying, we are going to manage the elections. We have the manpower, we have the infrastructure to manage elections. And they're only thinking about elections as security. So they're missing the point completely. Because when you're talking about elections, of course, there is the credibility of the elections. And if that is not assured, you will then have the spillover. There is also the political temperatures that fan electoral violence. So how has a National Cohesion Commission performed? I think they've done reasonably some work on local disputes.
Yeah.
Kind of boundary disputes. They've been doing those kind of mediations. In terms of reining in public officers, in terms of their utterances, we've seen some kind of efforts, people being arraigned in court, but we haven't seen prosecution. So are we better off? Maybe 20, 30% better off. But I think in terms of the spirit of reining in public officers and their tendency to fan and fuel the flames, they are too beholden.
I personally
to the
have
executive.
not felt the impact of NCIC. I think that it is a commission that has been set up in name to show that something was done to rein in these errant politicians or others who behave in a manner that would likely stir up something. However, to say, because they don't have any prosecutorial powers, they can make suggestions and recommendations, but that's about the size of it. And even when we have seen things whereby everybody's up in arms and saying somebody should not be able to behave like that, especially somebody who's a political leader, I don't see that the commission has come in to do anything earth-shaking or make any earth-shaking recommendations that have led to action later. I have not. If there's a yes or no answer to that, I have not.
Yours is no.
No.
No, you haven't. Like you said, Wanjiru, at the local level, those local disputes about small communities here and there, community A having a dispute with community B about boundaries, over grazing lands and such, they've been able to address those. And maybe they could also argue that those are the ones that also then escalate to become national issues. So if you're dealing with them at the local level, you're dealing with the base of the problem. But one of the key reasons why this commission was established is to deal with the bigger issue.
The big issues.
Exactly.
And the big issue is actually just directly political.
Exactly.
Fanning inter-community animosity.
Exactly.
One person comes out and says something that then goes ahead and incites an entire community to rise up against another community. And I don't think they've done much on that. And it's not because they lack prosecutorial powers. Only the DPP has prosecutorial powers, but they have the power and mandate to investigate.
They have the power and mandate of investigation and recommendation thereafter, which they, if you ask me, has not been properly utilized.
I agree. And this goes back to the issue of appointments. Because we had, like, for instance, the Commission on the Implementation of the Constitution. We had even the CRA, especially the first batch of appointments. Those were very high cadre appointments. And the caliber of those commissioners, they didn't have prosecutorial powers, but you felt them. And they spoke to the national agenda. But what we have here are people who have taken the very safe road. They work with local kind of conflicts. And this is an issue because obviously local communities lose their lives. They haven't necessarily resolved them, but they've been able to mitigate some. But they've run away from the bigger issues. I think they have tamed some of the more outright tendencies. Because you had some level of enforcement, by the way, even around the 2017 elections. Politicians had to change their electioneering strategies, from the rallies. But people were then going like door to door to send those kind of
same.
So they were monitoring, but they lack the courage. They are not up to the task. They're playing the political game. And this is unfortunate with a lot of professionals who've been appointed to these important constitutional positions and then take the safe route.
They take the safe route. Let's take that conversation to the next hour for a bit, right? This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. It's now 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Politicians and Kenyans have been warned against spreading hate speech ahead of next year's general elections. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission Chairman Samuel Kobie, and Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu say they'll work together in ensuring hate mongers are brought to justice, are brought to book, and those who intend to incite violence in the elections are prosecuted.
A very strong multi-agency team that is working on preparations for the general election. We are more prepared than we were even in 2017 and 2013.
We look forward very much to support from the leadership, particularly when it comes to dealing with the hate mongers.
We shall not be the weak link in this one. We shall deliver justice timelessly.
Nairobi Police Boss Augustine Thumbi has put city thugs on notice of an increased crime rate. Thumbi says they've increased security personnel in the CBD to arrest individuals behind kidnappings and muggings. He has further called on victims of such incidences to report to the police, besides posting it on social media. Border operators have also been put on the spot for ferrying criminal gangs. Moi Avenue, Globe Roundabout and areas around City Hall have been cited as crime hotspots.
We have increased security tremendously. Vizuri ukishapata ripoti yoyote unaona inahitaji kupeanwa kwa polisi, iwe piga ripoti. Hata kama huwezi kwenda mwenyewe physically kwa polisi, huwezi kosa namba ya polisi yoyote ambayo unaweza kumpigia simu. We also want to make sure that all motorbikes belong to one area. For example, if it is Karoli, lazima wawe na ile wanasema shimo.
More than 5 million Kenyans managed to file their 2020 tax returns before yesterday's deadline. The Kenya Revenue Authority attributed the rise in number to enhanced taxpayers' sensitization and filing of tax returns and the measures put in place by the authority to facilitate taxpayers with the filing process. The authority extended working staff hours to support the exercise and expects the number to have gone up by the end of today. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi has lined up a series of tours in 9 counties to bolster his message of unity ahead of 2022. The Speaker is scheduled to undertake various activities in Narok, Nyandarua, Siaya, Migori, Bungoma, Nakuru, Uasin Gishu, Vihiga and Lamu in the next 2 months. Muturi is keen on tapping on his network of MPs, banking on the working relationships he has built with them for the years he's been at the helm. This weekend, the Speaker will be in Narok, where the leaders have planned, among other activities, to recognize him as an Maasai leader. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
Okay, so what are we looking at? A little bit on Mombasa Road, a little bit here and there. Githurai seems to be an issue there, heading into the CBD, joining the Thika Superhighway. Towards Thika, actually, if we look at that, small accident that's going outbound. So it slows things down a little bit, but not too bad. Coming off Langata Road, there's a bit of a slowdown around KWS, heading towards the Timor roundabout. But again, passable without too much of a headache. Mombasa Road at the SGR, Athi River, Devki stage traffic is flowing very well this morning in both directions. And there we don't see a lot. Lunga Lunga industrial area, an accident there, and that is going to mash things up quite some as you're headed out towards the Likoni interchange on Mombasa Road. Getting off Jogo Road into Landis and out into the city is slow, but it's moving, so that's a good thing. If we can keep it moving, that is the aim. Talk to us so that we can keep doing that, and if you're not able to, maybe we can find a better route. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start.
Very good morning to you wherever you're tuned in online. SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or our website www.spicefm.co.ke, or on SpiceFM around the country, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. In the room with you this morning is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and Wanjiru Gekonyo. Today's proverb, anayetaka hachoki, na akichoka keshapata. One who craves for something does not tire until they get it. If they appear to be tired, just know they got what they were looking for.
We will overcome.
Yes, we will overcome. We will overcome. Mm-hmm. We're getting to the top of the hour and we're having this conversation about the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. So they launched a new strategic plan yesterday. And during this launch that happened at Bomas of Kenya, they invited Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government, Fred Matiang'i. Remember, his department is instrumental in enforcement of and implementation of this NCIC. They also invited the Chief Justice, Martha Koome. She sent her deputy, Justice Philomena Mwilu, who also came here. And Justice Mwilu told them, as you undertake your activities under this strategic plan, we must deepen the engagement between the Commission and the judiciary and work in the public interest with all stakeholders to develop systems and mechanisms that facilitate greater efficiencies and better outcomes for the people of Kenya whom we serve. She was basically also challenging them to tighten their cases on hate mongers and violence inciters before forwarding them to the courts. Bring to court watertight cases. Bring to court watertight cases. See, even the focus from the Deputy Chief Justice was on hate mongers and inciters of violence, because this is the reason why this commission was established. It was established following 2007. And one of the things that was realized is that people were just going around communities and inciting people willy-nilly with no checks and balances, with nobody who's actually able to come and rein them in. So it was established as an agenda for commission. First, to promote cohesion and integration of the people, to say we can live together as a community, as a society. The work of promoting, the work of going there to forestall any kind of tension in communities is the work of NCIC. What programs have they rolled out? They have told us many times they've rolled out programs of how do we bring in cohesion in a community, notice that there is some tension developing and go in there very fast and sort it out. At that local level, I think I can give them some pass mark. But on the national level, on the issue of the national animosity surrounding elections, which is primarily propagated by political actors, there they fail. And it's like there's this fear of Mheshimiwa. Whenever you see even the violence that comes out in some parts of the country, like in the northeastern, in the upper eastern, in Marsabit, for instance, you'll hear the DCI will summon some local politicians, NCIC will issue a statement saying, you know what, we condemn this violence. This is wrong. And so the impact of NCIC, the reason why it was established, they're not yet getting there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it gets frustrating. You're launching a new plan.
And even as they do that, so a new plan is being launched. The old one, in my opinion, didn't really work. Even if it did, we didn't feel its impact. Because if we were saying that it is at the because if you look at these community clashes, they exactly do have the potential to escalate into something more. However, oftentimes the deciding factor as to whether individuals or communities will clash is the sentiment that comes from a political leader. Look at it the world over. Look at clashes that took place, conflicts that take place in countries. Look at a classic example is what happened with the Holocaust. The Jewish Holocaust. It's the same thing that happened in Rwanda. You found that there were serious political leaders who used different platforms to say certain things that essentially divided people and then plummeted them into situations of war and conflict. So it is not, like you say, it is not the community alone that needed that attention, but at this place where people have the influence over people's decisions and people's actions that really should be curtailed. And I dare say that even those who know that it is because of them, to a certain extent, that this commission was put in place, have seen that they're not really doing anything. So it gives them the leeway to then continue doing whatever they want, because they know that should somebody have said something in a certain manner, whatever happened to them was nothing worth being afraid over for how they would behave in the future. Nothing. There was no deterrent element. There was nothing that would say, okay, you must be very careful because the commission is actually watching us to see what we can or cannot do. So even in terms of deterrence, that has not worked. It has not provided any kind of function that you look at it and say, actually, you know what, this is working. So I'm a bit worried when you launch a new plan and we're not able to see what the old one actually was able to achieve. So is it just coloring a pretty picture to make it seem as though something is being done, or to give Kenyans the impression that, yes, we're also on board? But to take an audit of what has actually been done and the impact that has been felt is very important. And even without going into those details, you can see.
This is what the chairman said yesterday, and the chairman is the Reverend Kobia. He said, the plan we are launching is based on intensive introspection and analysis. We have determined what and how the Commission inputs on Kenya's search for a just, peaceful, participatory and cohesive society living in ethnically, racially and religiously diverse contexts. So they're saying, you know what, we have basically, this plan is fully cognizant of who we are as a society, of where we are as a people, of what we need to do. We have also looked at our own work and analyzed our work and decided, let's come up with a new plan that now propels us to the next level. The question I want to ask you, Wanjiru, is on the issue of social accountability. How can we as citizens put a commission such as this in check? Right?
Yeah.
Because they ought to come to us, and we ought to have a way, by the time they're launching the second or the third or the fourth strategic plan, we should have a way in which they've reached to the community and asked, and the community has said, yes, we agree with what you're proposing to do. Now go ahead and do it.
Or to at least tell us where they were, what challenges they faced previously, and how they did or did not meet, you know?
Or a platform where we tell them, no, you guys have failed on this, and the other. And your next plan should include this.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. And the questions, and of course this article doesn't bring all that out. And the questions would be, number one, what was the process of generating the strategy? You know, was there public input? Were there consultations? Then also in the operations, have they operationalized the CSO, citizen engagement framework? Now, what you would normally expect is to, you know, see the statements of the stakeholders cited in the media. But of course, there could have been civil society stakeholders. We are not sure.
That could have happened.
It could have happened and maybe not been reported. But those are the checks. Because at the heart of it, when you look at NCIC, they're not only enforcing such a crucial function, including Chapter 6, the conduct of state officers. And they are upholding their oath to office, that the type of people who needed to be appointed to these institutions have to be very courageous, have to be very forward-looking, and can't afford to be co-opted and to play into the politics. And when you mentioned Rwanda, what Maina Kiai did with the government, was it the parliament then? The parliament, the 202 parliament, they took them to Rwanda and said, you know, verbal violence begets actual violence. And when you start seeing these heightened temperatures and intense confrontations that we're seeing now, this is a precursor to violence. Also, similar to the 202 to 207 period, there was referendum talk in the air. So actually there was also talk about pushing the election date, and there was this kind of contestation. Now, the big difference then is that was not a transition election. It was an incumbent seeking to come back. But unfortunately, the stakes around this election have been heightened by Uhuru Kenyatta's political interests around the transition. So this is very unusual, because usually the incumbent is trying to leave and try and secure a legacy, but is not that invested. This particular incumbent is very invested in the transition, because there's a lot of fear, I think, with the first family, that if you get the wrong candidate coming in, they will come after the commercial interests of the family. There's also examples we are seeing of former presidents being jailed. Jacob Zuma being the most recent. Zuma. Yes. I knew something was wrong there. Jacob Zuma being the most recent. So there are fears that that his sins may be unearthed if the wrong candidate. So all the conditions right now are the kind of conditions that ripen and deal to conflict in Kenya. And what is most disturbing, and I think possibly that's why this article is reported in the way that it is, this report is telling us that the state has done this calculation and said, security. Whatever happens on the political front, we will clamp down on Kenyans. That is very disturbing. Because
I don't read it that way, though.
We can expect force, but we are not hearing the commitments on the governance. Because the way this should have read is, we are concerned about the political temperatures, and these are the things that need to happen to reduce the political temperatures. And then security comes in, because you can't run an election based on security alone. Election credibility is based on the governance. And that should be the first item.
I don't read it that way, even in this report. And this is why. You're talking about the minister who's in charge of interior and coordination of government, who's basically in charge of security. And much as everything else is in play in terms of how to ensure that there's a credible election, security is a big part of it. You've got to make sure that everybody feels safe to be able to participate in the election. And if the person who has that responsibility comes and says, you know what, I have already started the journey towards ensuring that we can assure everybody of their safety around the election, I think that's a positivity that comes out of this. In terms of him saying, I have already called even the officers from the ground and put them together and told them we start preparing for how we shall coordinate the national government, how we shall ensure safety of the electoral officials, how we shall ensure safety of the electoral material, how we shall ensure safety of citizens participating in the election. How in the event there is any skirmish, we are ready to deal with it in whatever way it comes. I've also seen Matiang'i also said, in Kenya, we are not going to shut down social media because of violence. That's the job of NCSC, to make sure that you deal with violence. But we are going to deal with people who incite others in accordance with the law. That's how I read it.
Yeah, but
it's basically the person who's in charge of security saying, on our part, as you do your job, on our part, we are assuring you that you have a structure that you can rely on.
Great, but that structure alone cannot deliver a credible and peaceful election. So the extent to which like we say again, it could be that the article missed out some of the other stakeholders in the room. But the extent to which you have NCIC with the security agency, internal security, the judiciary are there, I'm asking, where is IEBC? Where are the other stakeholders?
It was a public forum, actually, attended by others.
Not public forum. We have seen, for instance, in the COVID response, one of the biggest challenges of government across the world is working in silos. And to deal with a problem like electoral credibility and security, you need to have an integrated approach. In fact, developments, they found, cannot be done unless it's done integrated approach. So the stakeholders need to have been around the table. The 360 approach. Because we are saying, without you doing your job, I cannot do my job. Security agencies cannot help us if we do not have a credible election. So my take is NCIC, national cohesion, need to have all the stakeholders around the table. And their narrative cannot be minimalist, that as we will monitor and will produce reports. No, they should do what I liked Edward Ouko very much, because he's just the auditor. He was just the auditor general. That was just his role. But he came in and said, but I must monitor also performance. And his statements were holistic. He went beyond just monitoring the money.
Yeah.
So I see if this article represents this narrow, minimalist kind of approach to electoral security,
I think it's
we are in big trouble.
But I think it's representing
a story
the
that
reality.
was told by the journalist who told the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
The function itself was a public forum. It was actually even being live streamed, and they had said, okay, so you can watch it here. This is what's happening, and there were other people in the room. Now, whether the
As
journalists
stakeholders or as participants?
in the launch,
No, that's so.
it
Eric,
was
answer my
the
question.
launch.
They were launching
We
this new
might not.
strategy.
We might
At
not.
the launch, the
who
people
are
who
the
were speaking were speakers. All right. During the development of the strategic report, that's where the issue of now who participated in the development of the strategic report.
Who participated in fueling
was
these
reached
new
out?
ideas
Yeah.
and what they were going to then be able to roll out in the next in this shortened dispensation of going into an election.
Yeah.
Who was involved in that process? We wouldn't know, because now as they were crafting this strategic report, they did that within now their own. So now they were coming out to say, after all the work that we have done, here is what we've come up with.
Right.
Now, for me, my
Yes.
issue is that the minimalist approach that we see has been the way in which they have been approaching things all along. That we saw that there were many, many political meetings that took place over the last 18 months, and things were said that, if you ask me, people are harboring and are waiting for 2022 to let come out. If they were not nipped in the bud then, if there was not the practice by the NCIC at that point to say, hold on a minute, we cannot allow this to continue to happen, we must be very careful. We saw things that happened in Kisii. We saw things that happened at Makutano Junction. We saw the things that happened then in London Ward, etc., etc., etc. Did we hear even a peep out of the NCIC? We see leaders behaving and politicians making statements in the manner in which they like. And we have not seen this wholesome approach coming from NCIC, apart from a statement here or there, or warning Kenyans to be very, very careful, and that is it. For me, if this has not been the practice, then we should not be surprised that this minimalist, again, approach in terms of this strategic report is the end result of all of this strategic planning.
You know,
we should not be surprised, because this is the way in which it has been happening all this time.
I'm actually looking at NCIC Kenya's Twitter handle, and I see they've been having meetings. They constantly have meetings. They have meetings with various stakeholders. There's a meeting that they had with Uwiano Platform. There's a meeting that they've also brought in Interreligious Council of Kenya. Persons living with disability. In terms of meetings and, talking about early warning systems, how do we develop early warning systems and all, they have all those things, and they've done. If you went and checked, you'll tick very many boxes. The issue that I personally have is you've got the teeth, you've got the voice, you've got the tail, you've got the mane, you're not biting.
No bite.
They've forgotten that their first mandate is the protection and promotion of the Constitution. And they've retreated to their minimalist mandate. Because in the protection and promotion of the Constitution, they have to take this view. In that, one of the main causes of political conflict in this country is lack of credibility of elections. It is not just enforcement. It is not just the utterances. So, apart from this lack of adequate stakeholder integration, their own perspective, apart from even the lack of enforcement, even the issues they make statements on. Because if I were the chair of NCIC, I would start with the biggest problem is political. Political parties behave. We are watching you. IBC should be round the table as a key stakeholder, because credibility of elections is the one thing that makes Kenyans kill each other, or the lack of credibility.
That's it. That makes Kenya, and that's what I'm saying. Look at political statements that have been made in the last 12 months. There was a skirmish here or there, and then people were dispersed. Do you think that the animosity and anger is left at the scene? No. It is carried with people along the lines, and those statements that are being made are just fuel and fodder for a fire, and people are waiting for the opportunity to then strike the match. And that opportunity is coming in 2022. But there has been no watchdog role in terms of making sure that these things are quelled when they must be.
Yeah.
And I almost want to think, I almost have my sentiment is that the NCIC also may think that they were instituted to make it seem as if something was being done about electoral violence, to make it appear as though something is being done, just a showcase commission, whereas in terms of a bite, the bite is not really there. They may also have the feeling that, all right, if we have a meeting here or there, we might give the impression that something is actually being done.
We're dealing with people. So here we are, we've come to Nandi County, we've gone to this other county, and what we're discussing is early warning systems and the impact of violence to the ordinary person. So persons with disabilities are in the room, and they say, when there is violence, this is how we suffer. They speak, it's a talk shop. They close, there's a report, it's an internal report, it's filed, and then violence happens. What action do you actually see? You could say that, yes, they have pushed for the arrest of a certain MP who's taken to court, who says, no, I wasn't slapping anyone, I was just saying hello to him. That wasn't a slap. And the conversation ends, and we all laugh and we sigh. But the person who should be maintaining that conversation and saying, it doesn't matter what you say, my friend.
Keep talking about it.
Everybody saw people roughing up an electoral official
And speak the
A
truth.
woman electoral official being
Dragged.
manhandled, being insulted and abused, sexually abused, and you all saw it, and no action was taken in those Matungu by-elections. And NCIC is just there, let's maintain peace. It's like you're a preacher, basically, and saying, because my job is to preach peace, I can only preach peace with this kind of tone, with my hands clasped together at my chest, and say, brothers and sisters,
Maintain peace.
maintain peace.
We pray for you.
We ask you to maintain peace. Violence begets violence. However, peace, happy are those that are peaceful. No, man. They need to do more. The chairman of NCIC should have spoken more than once about the Matungu by-election. Because that, for me, that there was no election that took place in Matungu.
In fact, that's an indicator of where we are.
That is an indicator of what is going to happen in 2022. I'm telling you the truth.
And then
there's
partisan implementation, because
Yeah.
there's a sense where we cannot step on the toes
Yes.
of
Of those.
That's
who
what I'm
are
telling
the
you. They
incumbents.
also have to me, it seems like they also have a feeling that, hold on a minute, okay, so we're put here almost as though we're a puppet commission to do just that.
In fact,
to have meetings
puppet commission
and write reports. But in terms of really putting and keeping people in check about what they're doing and the dangers that lie in some of the statements that are made, no impact.
I don't know. It's really disturbing, and I think it's good that we're going to have a discussion with ELOG, Mule Musa of ELOG, because we become so desensitized to electoral violence that even when there's abject failure of institutions, we say nothing, or we make a statement and we move on.
We move on. We point fingers.
Tumechoka na hatujafika.
We point fingers
your poem
and
is
we
not,
expect somebody else. The proverb.
Your proverb is not working for us.
Tumechoka
na
hujapata.
Hatujapata. It's getting worse.
Let's take a break, and when you come back out of the break, let's revisit the question that I asked you. Citizens' role in accountability, in demanding accountability of the institutions that we have, because we've created institutions. We have them. This is a constitutionally protected institution, saying that they can be a puppet of somebody, and we as citizens are just pointing and saying, what do these guys do anyway? What more can we do? Because
who are they?
There's a commission.
How are they appointed?
Yes.
That's where you'll find the issue.
As we asked all those questions, they are still draining cash from the exchequer. They are still running programs, and we are still hurtling towards a violent election. 29 minutes after 7, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Have you checked it out yet? Well, there are very many jobs that have been advertised there today. Tala, which is formerly InVenture, is looking for a senior manager for shared services. Other organizations are looking for employees as well. If you don't find any that suits you today, subscribe and you will receive an SMS or an email telling you a job that suits you has been posted. Who else? Spinners and Spinners is looking for a visual communicator. That's a digital and graphic design. Oracle is looking for an application sales executive, AML and financial crime compliance. Flutterwave is looking for a product compliance manager. EduLink International College is looking for an assistant lecturer. All these jobs and many others on jobs.standardmedia.co.ke.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Mamboni Express na Naivas. As an authentically homegrown brand with over 30 years in operation in Kenya, Naivas is excited to announce our new express store along Windy Mbingu Street, the first of our express stores in the CBD. Visit the new Naivas Express store along Windy Mbingu Street to enjoy exclusive deals and offers, as well as the same great prices on all your household shopping. Naivas saves you money. Mambo Express.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*2# to read the Nairobian e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line and stay up to date, the hottest talk of town with no additional charges.
24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Living isn't just breathing. Living is about taking it all in. Living is not just getting by. Living is taking the roads less traveled. Living isn't just eating. Living is about the art of wining and dining. Living isn't just doing the mundane. Living is about savoring the finer things in life. Because living is not a chore. Living is an art. In the new season of The Art of Living, we explore unearthed gems and discover what makes them home away from home. Join Nailante Kenga as she engages with exciting guests and tours the most exclusive destinations and homes every Sunday, 6 p.m. on KTN Home.
24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Losing a loved one is never easy. The lingering memories, the what-ifs, but in all the gloom, we find ways of celebrating them. And here at the Standard Tributes, we aim to give your loved ones that befitting send-off. Visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/tributes today and post your loved one's tribute.
It's sunny in Nairobi at 13, highs of 23, back down to lows of 14 today. Cloudy conditions at 13 in Nyeri, highs of 22. 25 will be the high in Nakuru, where it's cloudy at 14. 14 is also what it is in Eldoret. It's cloudy and will go to highs of 22. 27 will be the high in Kisumu, where it's cloudy at 20. It's also cloudy at 20 in Kakamega, to go to highs of 26 and lows of 14. 29 will be the high in Mombasa, where it's sunny as well at 23. Sunny conditions rule Malindi skies as well at 24, highs of 28. 26 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kampala at 17. And guess what? It's sunny in Dar es Salaam as well at 22, highs of 30, lows of 21. 4 will be the low in a clear Johannesburg at 10, going to highs of 19. It's going to go to highs of 30 in Lagos at 25. That'll be the low. It's raining right now. Clear conditions at 22 in Kinshasa, going to highs of 30 and lows of 22.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Okay, so a little bit of traffic here and there, guys. We saw some on Mombasa Road, and obviously that'll carry out. ICD route is looking pretty good as you connect to the southern bypass. Not too much of an issue. Jogo Road, Hamza is where it's backed up to, heading out towards the City Stadium roundabout. And we saw quite some traffic within the industrial area this morning. In the middle of traffic hour is going to take us into about 9 o'clock. So let's see what it looks like in a short while thereafter. Okay, coming off of Thika Road, the Kiambu Road joining with Muthaiga Square. Not too bad for now. Spice FM KE, that's how you can talk to us on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning, and thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. With you is Eric Latif Nduoko and Wanjiru Gekonyo. Have you felt the impact of NCIC, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission? That's a question we are asking you this morning. Have you felt the impact of NCIC since it was first established in 2008 as one of the agenda for commissions, and then it was entrenched in the Constitution, and it's been there ever since? Have you felt the impact of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission? 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Daniel Osiemo says, you know what, folks? NCIC is the only scarecrow drawing real salaries from scaring politicians.
Wow. Well put. That one needs a caricature. It needs to be visualized.
So you can just see it there,
Yes.
fluttering its wings. In the wind, and politicians look at it and, oh my God, NCIC is here.
Actually, you have them sitting on the shoulder of the
Yeah,
scarecrow.
yeah, they're sitting there, they're eating.
They're eating the
Actually,
maize.
this one has to be visualized.
They're harvesting the njugu karanga and they're sitting there and breaking it and putting one in the mouth as they look at this thing fluttering.
Supposed to be scaring them away.
Yes.
Have you felt the impact of NCIC? Wajiro, as citizens, we have all these commissions, right? When it comes to social accountability and us demanding service
Yeah.
from our institutions, what is our role and how do we go about it?
Okay, our role, of course, we have a duty to be engaged and to demand delivery. We have a duty to understand because it starts with that. And so, yes, we can say that we are not performing optimally. There's a number of commissions, so the expectation would be that citizens will organize around their interests. I can't speak for the NCIC, but have citizens engaged well with, okay, we can say we have a new constitution, or we have a constitution that anticipates active citizen engagement, and we are also falling short. We are falling short for a number of reasons. Number one, we don't have a culture of active engagement. Number two, we are not seeing the results, and we easily give up. I don't think we have yet rallied citizens at a critical level to action, because there are citizens who engage. There are those even who engage with this commission in their local areas. There are those, like now when you say Uyano has also faith-based, the coalition you talked about has also got
The
faith-based.
interreligious council.
And so there is engagement. But what we are not seeing is the widespread engagement and the holding
It hasn't
accountable.
caught fire.
It hasn't. And the bigger question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we get the ground? And part of the difficulties of the Constitution, of course, is there are very many institutions with which citizens do engage. You have the counties that engage. You've got the national government that engages. You've got the commissions. And then citizens also have to do their work.
Well,
So
it's very
one of the
interesting that you
pillars-
say
The
that.
work
Can
of
I just,
living.
because there's
The
a
work
group
of living.
It's very interesting that you're saying that, because yesterday I had a conversation with a group of about 40 people between the ages of 25 and 40. And the one sentiment that has come out very clearly is that they will not engage. And you can imagine, these are the people who essentially were placing the responsibility of moving this country forward in terms of a citizen's approach on their shoulders, right? They say they will not engage. Now, engagement could be now this active participation that you're talking about, even voting. Why? Because of the same thing that you have said. They're not seeing the impact.
Apathy.
So they will not engage. They will not waste their time. They would rather use their efforts for something else. So even if it caught fire right now, because they have not seen the impact that it may have had before, or they're not even seeing a promise, they can't even see a hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for them, that something will be done should they engage. So they will not vote because they believe that a system has been rigged thoroughly. And we can, as we talk about this at 8 o'clock, it's also something that can come about. They will not engage in active participation because they don't feel as though anything is going to be done about it. They will not come out, they will not come forward. This is a group of people who've come out, who within their circles are actually discussing these things. But they say, you know what, I'm not going out to do anything, but I'm just not going to engage because I don't feel anything is going to be done.
I think
So
that
you're
issue
there.
the issue of apathy, maybe I'd say as civil society, what we haven't done is frame the problem, because if you frame the problem, then citizens know if they'll engage or not. Right now, what they're saying is they won't engage with this government that doesn't respond.
Yep.
Fair enough. But are you saying you're going to give up on your democratic space?
And your
because
problem.
you can't afford to be apathetic. These taxes are finding you.
Yep.
They've gone, they've misspent money. It will find you where you are. When the economy collapses, it will find you.
But then the question...
When criminal upon criminal is elected into public office, even if you didn't vote, you still live in Kenya.
Yep.
So to do nothing is not an option.
Let me read the next...
The issue is, what do we do?
Sure. Now, let me read the next question that was posed in this same group after this same was sent to them and said, so what are you going to do?
You have to do something.
You have to do something. The next question that came out of, again, one of them was, what exactly is it that I'm supposed to do that is going to yield a result over sentiments that I have put out in the past that have not gotten any attention whatsoever?
I think it goes back to, these are youth. You say,
25 to 40.
Up to 40.
Pretty. It goes back to civic education.
Yep.
And the lack thereof. It goes back to a lack of, we are not schooled in our democracy or our democratic process or our role. By the way, if you're look at the way South Africa engages. Even the narrative, even if you watch their news,
active lobbying,
you just really get a sense that people are very aware. So number one, from the word go, we are conditioned to be very dependent in this country. And we have to change that. And we have to recognize that our engagement is not so that I benefit and I'm comfortable. It is also for those that come. It's also my contribution to the democratization process of this country. So this is why I'm saying, as civil society, I think we have failed to formulate the problem and the role that citizens need to play. It's not just to engage with government, it's to hold government, it's to get the government we want.
Yes.
I think what Eric also often says then comes into play here, because I think in Kenya, there is a disconnect between the citizens and government. Citizens believing that government is this thing over there, who in Nairobi, who will come and tell us what to do, and then we vote, and then our relationship there, it ends. We get married before elections, we're having a honeymoon during the election period, and then when you're in office, we break up.
Properly speaking, what happened is because under the Moi regime, a dictatorial regime, citizen spaces were frustrated. Cooperatives, apart from the IMF coming in, cooperatives, associations, all formations were infiltrated by the political regime. So citizen organizing, unions, all of these were infiltrated. So citizen voice was muted. What did not happen? 202 202 maybe to 2013 was a little bit different. There was efforts at civic education, and I would say, much as now we look back and say, wow, Kibaki administration did a lot of good, the one thing that they did not do properly was the civic education. Because to get them in office, there was very active citizen education. But then, under the Ministry of Justice, they turned that civic education into a state-led affair. And they refused to give the kind of revolutionary education anticipated to support the implementation of the Constitution. So the disconnect is this. Citizens do not know or own or have not internalized the Constitution and their role in democratizing our institutions. That is the disconnect that is bearing with us.
It's a huge one.
And I think,
huge.
You see that whole decade of the 90s,
yes,
where now we have moved into multi-party election, where we are seeing a very active and engaged civil society organization and a political class that's saying, all right, we need to see change. People are very much engaged. But to what level? They were engaged on only one side of a conversation. We need to get Moi out. We need to change government. Once we change, we get Moi out, we change the constitution. We have all our solutions in one. And the depth of that participation, the depth of that civic education and awareness is what was lacking then. Such that it was so easy for it to just die down as soon as all those people who were agitating for change came together and formed government in 2002. So all of them were part of they were in government or were supporters of those in government come 2002. And so that whole conversation about, what is it that we were supposed to do? They went with it. They had not left a citizen that is actually empowered to know this is what we want. This is why we want to participate. This is how we shall be engaging on a regular basis. It was still, okay, we don't want to listen to this leader. We are going to listen to this other leader who is, the alternative voice, the civil society. Then the alternative voice takes over power and we have no one else to listen to. We were left
in fact,
high and dry.
Eric, you hit it, and you had said it earlier. This is an Agenda 4 commission. And the separation between civil society and the state under the Kibaki administration, which now looks like a darling against this administration, but it's not. The big split was around Agenda 4, because Agenda 4 was forced on the Kibaki administration. It was forced on them. We must remember, the constitution we enjoy today was forced on the Kibaki administration. And they implemented it half-heartedly and reluctantly through court cases and demonstrations.
Just
At least
boxes.
They were more responsive than this very criminal enterprise of the Jubilee administration, because that's what it is. But they did not implement Agenda 4. And that's why when the K-NICE civic education program was being formulated, and K-NICE was the civic education program, because the 90s, by the way, much as Moi was very oppressive, there was a lot of civic education. Through the pulpit especially. A lot of ongoing civic education. But like you say, the message was superficial. Moi must go. We must multi-party democracy. That's the level. That was the issue then. So we didn't move to the next level because the Kibaki administration would not let Agenda 4 go on. Why? Agenda 4 is very touchy. It goes to land issues. It goes to historical injustice issues. Of course, there was a constitution issue, which was then forced through, but it was forced through without truth and justice, without land, and without the education. So the point is, our democratization process that was stolen by the Moi regime was reclaimed by the Agenda 4 settlement, but it has been thwarted. And we got a constitution without the enabling framework. That is why 2013, we got an administration that now pushed back, not just against Agenda 4, that's a non-issue. It pushed back against the constitution. And that is what BBI is. Actually, BBI is just saying, hold on, this democracy discussion, forget about it. Let's be very superficial. And let's change the narrative. And let's talk about 2022
Other
succession.
things, yes. Let's talk about other things.
We are in a mess. And that's why these people are opting out.
And the citizen is not engaged. We have a constitution that says clearly that the citizen has the sovereign power. But we haven't seen any organ, even in civil society, going to actually translate that to people and saying, you know what?
It is you.
It is you who is Kenya. We still have a citizen that believes that government is that thing. I am this thing. You have said it many times before, Wanjiru, that we have learned to live despite the government. The government is doing its own thing. Okay, sawa. When it comes and it needs something from me, I'll give it. But I'm doing my thing. It's like you are neighbors. That neighbor is cooking their meal for their family.
Using your salt, using your sugar.
Yeah. If they come, I have my own salt here. They took my salt yesterday.
I bought more.
Wakimaliza chumvi wakuja wanitisha
They are uprooting your potatoes to cook them. You're like, I'll plant more.
Yes. And now the person then you empower is the person who tells you know what? That guy has so much stolen from you in their granary. I'm going to rob the granary and bring it back to you. And that's the person that you elect.
Yes.
With the mindset of you're going to rob from that person and bring it back to me. Not that you're going to make sure that person is accountable to me. No.
Exactly.
So we are in that point where you now get frustrated. This person came and told me they're going to get me back my goats. They haven't brought my goats back. Now, why am I going to elect somebody else?
Why do I bother to engage?
Yes.
So let me just continue living my life on my own.
You asked me a question, social accountability. What happened? The civic education, civil society, what happened? In 2013, 2014, when Anne Waiguru was Minister of Devolution and was charged with, had a very strong mandate because the relations with external donors were charged to her ministry. At that time, the government refused to sign cooperative agreements with the US, with the EU, And their condition was remove the citizen component from your governance programs. Between 2013 2014, by the way, governance institutions of civil society were shutting down. All of us, by the way, were going on partial salaries because civil society in this country is not funded by government.
Yep.
It's not funded by citizens. It's funded through foreign assistance. We are also supported.
Yeah.
The very donors who also lend give us grants and support our work. So our governance work in this country is supported by donors. And in those 2-3 years, I remember this because we tried to engage with Anne Waiguru because we were talking about the public benefits organizations operationalizing that act to strengthen civil society, and they refused. But also the funding the taps were turned dry. Those taps only reopened without the civic component. They only reopened, by the way, the only citizen engagement that was allowed was county level, so that you'll have a huge program. But the only engagement that can happen is at sub. In fact, they said, let's look for community-based organizations. These national institutions that make noise.
Yeah.
That is what happened to civil society. And that is why then civil society has to pick very small strategic issues and can't have the impact. The other thing that happened to civil society, of course, is with the devolution of power, you now have 48 governments. So much as you want to have an impact, the field is really busy.
Yeah.
And civil society, especially national institutions, are small. You're talking about 10, 15 people. 15 people is actually a medium-sized civil society organization. So the budgets are small, the personnel is little, the field is wide, and then there's government impunity. So social accountability, yes, is necessary more than ever. It is happening more at the local level, but even at local level, the responsiveness, the ability to influence outcomes is not there because central problem, leadership accountability, which is why coming back to NCIC, they have betrayed the mandate. They have betrayed their mandate by implementing it in a minimalist way and leaving Kenyans to their own devices while they earn salaries and
because they also know
employer.
that they're in a difficult position. In order to keep leaders accountable, there's a certain force that you must have. There is a certain resolve that you must imbibe in order to do that. You can't go pussyfooting about issues. You can't say, all right, come, let's have a chat. No. If you are going to see things that are going wrong, you must be able to speak out against them and make sure that there is, a commensurate charge or commensurate action to this thing that this individual has done. But it's going to be that peaceful hands together, bowing down kind of Buddha moment. You're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to do anything. Why have lobby groups look at some of the most vibrant lobby societies that we have, United States being one of them, on the continent, South Africa being another one. Why is that? The more and more that people are able to see a requisite action to their initial standpoint is more reason why they will continue. That one individual comes out and says, this is what I'm going to do, and they see an action. Look at the way in which things happened with, even before Nelson Mandela came out of prison, Winnie Mandela and the groups that she continued to lead and to continue to start to say no to some of these things. Why did people then join the groups and move on towards activism and things like that? Because they saw the impact of them coming together and insisting on certain things being done. It now gave an impetus to those who came behind to say, hold on a minute, if we come together and speak out about some of these things, and if we insist on accountability persistently and consistently, then is when we will see some kind of change. It gives fuel to those who are coming behind. Absolutely. But if we sit and just watch things happen and say, all right, Wanjiru made a statement over the weekend, actually, Kenyans, it was not good.
Very bad, very bad.
It was a very bad.
Very bad.
Don't do it again.
Pass the salt. Or
the
another
salt.
drink.
Do you expect anything to happen?
Bottoms up.
Perhaps what these commissions also need is knowing that they've got backup from the citizens.
Exactly.
Because if look, not just this one, there is the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. There is the National Commission on Human Rights.
Human rights.
Yeah.
There's a Gender and Equality Commission. All these commissions have things that they should be doing, but they are only dealing with one big lion here. That's the one that has all the meat. So as an NCIC, you know you're going to get funded through your interaction and engagement with this particular beast. And if you behave in a certain way, people don't even know you exist.
I think
this beast will starve you of the meat that you need to eat. And the people will not come and say, no, give this small rat that meat.
I think I agree with all of this, and this is not necessarily to resolve that, but it is another aspect, which is about institutions and the people who run them and the appointments. I think the one disservice that this administration has wrought on the people of Kenya is giving us very weakening institutions. Weakening institutions through political appointees of people who maybe meet paper criteria. Sometimes they are not even the first choice, first pick, Or
tokenism.
Tokenism. And, Parliament, by the way, has very much a role to play in this because the Constitutional Commission appointments have to be ratified by Parliament, and we know the musical chairs. So the weakening of institutions is something no country, no democracy can survive. So if you get the people with papers, but they do not have the... And some of them maybe even want to serve. Some of them are just taking jobs and thinking about how to whatever themselves. But some want to serve, but they don't have the courage
or the resolve
to deal with important issues. Like you look at SRC. And SRC, I think it's just about wrong appointments, people who are very technically competent, but did not understand their mandate and have not helped us with the payroll in that they haven't resolved, they didn't understand the political nuances. So, on one hand, I would say this is a constitution that's very revolutionary. We have an education system, process, and an entire system that's very status quoist. So the people appointed to these positions, some of them are good people, well-intended, but they don't appreciate to push the revolution. You need to school yourself in human rights. You need to school yourself in how do I push for change? How do I work with a captured state? Then there are those other political appointments where people are just not bothered and their aim is to lie as low as possible.
But when it comes to constitutional commissions, the citizens have a bigger role to play, and they have a role. Look, even in the appointments to constitutional commissions are done by panels. These panels are actually set in law. Who sits in the panel? Who is a member of this panel? They represent various interest groups. So our citizens, through the various interest groups, are the ones that are selecting the people who sit in these commissions. And if this selection panel does not understand what they should be putting to, who they should be appointing to this office, and then Parliament, who is also our citizens' representation, does not know how to vet these people, we end up...
Goes back to the professional class, lying low and playing it safe, including whichever institutions then are sitting on the panel. Are not looking at the things that matter.
Exactly.
So the professionals of this country have done a great disservice in enabling the political class to eat. And professionals maybe don't see it that way, but they lie low and they play it safe.
Professionals, citizens, let's just call them citizens. At professional level, at whatever level you represent, because there's religious...
There's more responsibility on professionals. And more access to power and more access to
information as well. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we ask ourselves, are we going to have a credible election next year? What is it? What are the ingredients of a credible election? Good morning. It's now 8 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. The hearing of the BBI appeals case by a 7-judge bench today enters day 3. The BBI fight back will today see David Ndii take time to defend BBI's ruling by the High Court. 81 respondents, mainly from civil societies, will also respond to President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM Raila Odinga's appeal on the BBI. The appeal court will thereafter hear respondents' argument that the referendum should have multiple questions. Yesterday, lawyer Otiende Amolo fronted the issue on the BBI promoters, and former AG Githu Muigai presented IBC's quorum issue.
And on that page, the IBC says in paragraph 1, the said initiative was promoted by Honorable Dennis Waweru and Honorable Junet Mohammed.
When a judge strikes out provisions as unconstitutional, there are only 3 ways that the law can be interpreted. One is that there is a prospective overruling, or there can be a declaration that the striking out takes effect from the date of the filing of the petition or the suit.
3 members of parliament are on the spot over fictitious mileage claims amounting to more than 11 million shillings. Auditor General Nancy Gadungu in a report says some lawmakers exaggerated mileage claims to 3 times the actual amount, while others received domestic and foreign subsistence allowance. The report further says that instances where some were paid allowances amounting to 5.2 million shillings. The MPs received the questionable payments on days when they were outside the country and already receiving foreign subsistence allowances. In 2015, the same case happened, and the SEC also probed MPs after it emerged that some of them were claiming mileage for vehicles already written off. A grieving man whose image slipping in the rain beside his wife's casket outside a Meru police station went viral, causing public outcry, has finally been awarded 1.5 million shillings in compensation. Meru High Court Judge Edwin Murithi said the actions of the police officers infringed on his rights to dignity. The man was arrested together with his relatives and 2 children for breaking curfew orders.
The event of being dumped all alone by the roadside in a dark, cold and rainy night with a casket bearing the corpse of his dead wife were not only psychologically traumatizing and horrific, but they also exposed the petitioner to physical danger. The actions of the police officers infringed on the rights to dignity, protection against torture and cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment of the petitioner.
And finally, 4 people are receiving treatment at Keroka and Nyansiongo Hospital in Nyamira County after being injured in a road accident. Regional Traffic Commander Hassan Osman says the driver of the private vehicle heading from Sotik to Keroka lost control and crashed into a ditch along the road. Police have launched a manhunt for the driver of the car who disappeared after the accident. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, Southern Bypass looking pretty good going into the city. Not too much of an issue this morning. Jogo Road is actually jam-packed right now as you're trying to get out going towards the City Stadium roundabout, headed on to Landis Road, but not too terrible. Traffic today has been behaving considerably. In and outbound on Mombasa Road, however, a bit slow right now. It'll be that way for some time. Uhuru Highway then through to Westlands. In and outbound also slows down considerably. Remember, Muthaithi Road is what's going to help you get out of Westlands since you can't use the Museum Hill ramp. The bypass is looking good as well. Eastern, Southern, the Red Hill Link Road in Westlands, and also the Northern bypass going out towards Outer Ring. Not too much of an issue today. All right, so let's keep looking at things. You stuck anywhere? Let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text 40127. Let's keep things moving this Thursday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation
Kenya's
Room,
biggest conversation
the only way
to the third hour. It's 5 minutes past 8. Welcome. We have City Muga is away. We have Wanjiru Gikonyo, who is our guest host this week, Nduoko, and I'm Eric Latif. We have a guest in the studio. I'll be introducing him shortly, but let me first tell you today's proverb. Anaitaka hachoki, na akichoka keshapata. One who craves for something does not tire until they get it. And if they appear tired, they've gotten it. Anaitaka hachoki, na akichoka keshapata.
But we've said Kenyans are tired. Hawajapata.
Hawajapata.
Yes.
So we're just too tired too early.
We've been waiting for this for a long time.
Yes. And that's the reason for the proverb.
Independence, promises of the independence. Then there was the second liberation, promise of the second liberation. We then have the constitution, promise of the constitution. Kenyans are tired.
Kenyans should now have a moment to introspect and ask themselves, so what's not working? And why is it not working?
And I think that's a good segue for our guest.
Yes. Our guest this hour is Mule Musau. He's the National Coordinator, Elections Observation Group, ELOG. Good morning, Mule.
Good morning to you, Latif, and good morning to the team. It's good to be on this very famous triangular table.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
That is the hot seat. We just warm it up for you. As we talk about elections are heated. So it's not just going to be warm. This one will make it hot.
Let it be.
Yes.
It needs to be hot.
As we discuss elections and our preparedness to elections and how then we judge the outcome of our elections. We want to talk about credible elections in 2022. But before we even get there, let's deal with the translation and the meanings of some of these terms. Fair, free, fair, and credible elections. What are those?
Very interesting start of the conversation. We weight them differently. I will weigh them with credible, free, and fair. Not the opposite, not what you've said. Credible because we expect to have a kind of a standard. When you talk about free and fair elections, basically you're saying we want elections where everybody can be able to participate. We have an electorate. We have an even playing ground that's about fairness. There's universal suffrage for all the eligible voters in the country. We have any person who wants to participate in the election, either as an aspirant or a voter, can be able to participate. We have rules of engagement which apply to everybody, which are also fair. So that becomes much more of free and fair. The credible part is when you're talking about the overall assessment. How do we run this process? We have a legal framework that we are supposed to be following. That legal framework is the standard that the citizens put on agencies out there to ensure that they conduct elections in a manner that is going to be perceived by the public to be credible, to be positive, to be on the basis of the standard which has been subscribed to. And then we have a culture of how we do it. I went to the Tanzanian elections some time ago, and I realized that when they are making their lines, they even give preference to women. The men give preference to women. It's a culture. It's not even something which is written anywhere. But there's a culture in which you conduct elections. There is a code in which you conduct elections. There's a transparency with which you want to conduct a process of the people. There's an involvement that you want people to have in their own process. So all those qualities around the election, making sure that it is transparent, it is accountable, it is verifiable, it is simple, actually articulated under Article 86 of our Constitution, that is the basis of what we'd call a credible election.
Right now, or rather maybe I should start with last week, ELOG, which maybe you'll explain a little bit, together with other civil society organizations, held a national dialogue under a campaign that you're calling Credible Elections. And it's being touted in some of the media as an IPPG, a new IPPG. So 2 questions. Why have you picked the issue of credible elections, not free, fair elections? So your hashtag is credible elections. It seems you're laying weight on that. Have we accomplished the free and fair? And is now what's missing the credible? And then this thinking that this is a new IPPG. Maybe you can explain a little bit what IPPG is. A lot of people have forgotten the history and why it's very historic to have the kind of convening that took place last week.
Like I said, why we weight credibility as the bigger word of those 3, the qualities of an election, is that first, free and fair is going to be subsumed within credibility of an election. And we are saying that while we have had a number of elections, we have had quite regular elections since independence. Kenya is one of the countries in Africa that can score very well when it comes to holding regular elections. But then the question now becomes, we have regular elections, but do they always espouse credibility? Are they believable? Are they acceptable elections? You could have as many elections as you want, but the question now becomes, are citizens satisfied with the results and the outcomes of that electoral process? And that's the reason we said, maybe it's time we started a conversation around looking at the quality of elections, the acceptability of the kind of elections that we conduct in the country. We have had 3 contested elections. The previous 3 elections have been hotly contested. The 2017, we know the nullification, the 2013 elections, the 2007 elections, which ended up with a post-election violence situation. And numerous other, apart from the 2002 elections, which seemed much more peaceful, and we that's part of the historical underpinnings that you were putting that conference on, that we have had very few elections in this country where you can be able to say, well, we think that went very well. So we need to start raising as citizens, we need to raise these questions about what are these things that keep getting wrong every time we come to an election. We know it's a season, for instance, where things go south in terms of violence, in terms of management of the processes, in terms of the kind of provocation that comes from the political class, so, and even effects on the economy itself. Every 5 years, there's always this upheaval about the situation in the country because of general elections. And I think we felt as a civil society that it was time that we needed to come together. Initially, there was very few organizations who were even interested in this. But then through a convening that we call the Technical Working Group on Elections, which brings about 24 civil society organizations working on different areas, some of them on rights-based approaches in terms of elections, us in Nelog, where we are conducting observation of the elections themselves, and others who are interested in even thematic areas like gender oriented monitoring of the electoral processes. We said, let's come together. Let's try to put a conversation, raise a conversation in the country where we're not just talking to ourselves, but we're also talking to the political class, whom we invited in that conference last week. We talked to the media and other actors, agencies, the IEBC, the registrar of political parties. So we wanted all these people to come first to do a number of things. Number one, to make commitments, especially the duty bearers and the political class and other actors, including the media. Can they make commitment that we all want to advance the aspect of credible elections in the country, so that when the media is capturing or covering electoral processes, they are objective, they are ensuring that all the issues which need to be brought on the table are brought on the table. The political actors are able to commit, the leaders. We had Kalonzo Musyoka, for instance, and Mother Karua. We had a representative from ODM, Opio Wandai, and Sarah, it's called Kimani, senator from Nakuru, representing the deputy president, and they came to make their commitments in that process to say we want to ensure that our political leadership is going to espouse to the code of conduct. They're going to follow the rules which are there, and we promise that we're going to support efforts towards holding transparent elections, holding credible elections come next year.
And did you believe them?
Well, there's a pinch of salt to some of these things. you start with a commitment. I think where we were coming from was say, let's start from a commitment. Let the media, we had the Editors Guild, Charles Otieno participating. Churchill Otieno participating. And he made a commitment that the media and the text do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to start moving from that point. We have these actors. Kalonzo, you came and you told us that this is the path that you're going to follow. You're going to ensure that even in your own party nomination, because you have an issue to raise with the political parties in terms of their own processes, that you will conduct elections that ensure there's credibility in the process. So I'll not say that whether it's a question of believing them at this moment. It's a question of they came, and they made their commitment, and now we start watching.
Is it the first time that you've ever seen them make a commitment of this nature that would then say, we've taken the first step towards this? Would it be the first time a commitment of this nature has been made as concerns elections?
It could be the millionth time that this has happened in this country. But you see, we have to begin from somewhere. And Shiro talked about the IPPG process, where people came together, political party players, the civil society actors, faith-based organizations. Everybody came together to say, can we have a consensus, a kind of a consensus in the country on how to engage moving forward? We seem to be stuck at a place where we are not so sure how we conduct elections anymore, despite the fact that we have an independent commission. I think we have moved on way from the Kivuitu Commission over the last 20 years. We have a government which keeps committing to ensure that there is a conducive environment in which an election can be conducted through the security apparatus, support through resourcing and all other things. We have political actors who have transformed. There's been a very fluid political environment out there. And then we have a civil society, and I heard you discussing this in the morning about we've been doing some level of citizen agency, promoting citizen agency, but nothing seems to be really happening. And therefore, you find that we are in a point in time where if we don't attempt another coming together, then we are going to be lost in the woods somewhere as we approach the elections. And we go to everybody's going to hold their corner. The civil society will stand their side and start cast aspersions on every move that is being made. The government will do the same thing, the political parties, everybody stands in their corner. And that is not good for our politics and our elections.
So this is different in that regard. I think, and what struck me is, number one, the administration has been very reluctant to engage civil society. And so, I kind of echo Ndu's concerns that, yes, political leaders came. You say that the Jubilee administration was represented or not represented?
Represented.
Did they agree? I believe there was a similar effort to have dialogue with political parties in the lead up to the 2013, lead up to 2017.
2017 elections. Yes.
Did they come around the table then?
No.
So at least we're beginning to see some inkling.
Forgive me for just being very, very cynical here. Like you've said, Mule, this is not the first time that political actors or actors in the electoral process have come together to talk about the election.
But the administration would not.
This is not the first time. Let me finish.
Yes.
This is not the first time. In the run-up to 2013, there was a similar commitment, conversation, civil society. Civil society. Yes, 2013.
But they are courting the country. They don't yet have power. They'll say anything
the
then.
Political parties, the political organizations were there. The civil society was there. There was commitment. Similar things happened before. The IPPG that we are talking about, all these things about commitment happen. Is it possible that your translation and your definition of what you're committing to is completely different from what Wanjiru is committing to at the table?
I think
because people can come in there and say, yeah, we commit to it. But in my own definition, credible election is if I win. Credible election is if things go my way.
So if I participate, I have increased my chances of winning.
Yes.
Credible elections are not my goal.
I don't think from where I sit, we want to say we are expecting miracles in this country. We're not expecting miracles, but there must be a context to how we want to do our things. In the run-up to 2013, remember there was an issue about the post-election violence and this kind of agreement, accept and move on thing, which was bringing people on the table. We don't want to go back there. So there's a background to that setting. The setting that we are talking about right now is a setting which is a bit different. And I think you've seen the robustness of the civil society when it has come to even issues to like public interest litigation. The BBI case is a very good case in point. We have seen very many other actions because now we are moving from just advocacy, just talking, just to taking action where we need to take action. One of the cautions we expressed in that conference was that we have this situation, for instance, with the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, with the issue of data and privacy of people's data. And we have even corporations which are involved in this process. And one of the cautions we gave moving forward is that we are going to start taking action, not just on the agencies, but we are going to go to court even on the corporates who are participating in this process because our data is being shared out there and Kenyans need to be protected. There's a commission in charge of issues about data privacy who should come on board. So now we are starting to ask questions to the right offices. You come, you make a commitment, but we make a follow-up. And the follow-up is not just going to a press conference. Part of the follow-up is also where action needs to be taken. It is taken moving forward. And then there's also a call for citizen agency, and I think you talked about it in the morning, that I don't know whether I hold the view that, yes, when Jiro talked about civic education and the need for people to stand up, but I think we need to move them beyond. It's not just civic education, it's even political education. Education which makes people rise up.
Yep.
Start asking, I have a right to this existence and I need to live in a space where my rights are protected and where I have the freedom to be able to exercise myself. So I think we are rising to a different level. And the start of this conversation, in our view, is that it allows us to make interrogative interventions. You said this and now we want to talk to you. Okay. We want to find out what is happening within your political party. ABC has committed to do ABCD. Now we want to move together. In fact, one of the other agreements quietly we've been talking about is when ELOG is going to do monitoring, can we involve the other civil societies or other aspects of the monitoring are also being captured, like rights abuses. ELOG may not be able to get all the information about somebody who was being clubbed outside the polling station because maybe your observer is inside. But you want all that conversation to be brought to the table so that all those violations are being discussed en masse.
Is that how to then get it to catch fire? Because I think another one of the issues that we were asking about earlier is that it may be that this conversation is alive in a few circles, but that the majority of Kenyans have not latched on to this, as it were. So how then do you break that and be able to get it to the point whereby there is that fire now that is resident in a lot more people who now want to be part of the conversation, who now want to ask questions? Because one of the things that you did say earlier was that credible elections, for example, means the involvement of many more people in the entire process.
Yes.
But then there are people who have taken an apathetic approach to all of this at the moment and are saying, you know what, it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, happens. Whether I vote or not, it doesn't make a difference. Whether I'm involved in the conversation, so long as there's no impact, then I don't see anything. It's a waste of my time. So how do you break it then and say, this is how others will be involved and get them to catch that fire?
Respond to that after the break. Let's take a quick break because we want to take a look at the traffic and weather. We are live with Mule Musau, National Coordinator of the Elections Observations Group, ELOG. Talking about credible elections as we gear towards 2022. This conversation is happening on SpiceFM, on KTN Home and online. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that...
The weather with Spice FM.
It's sunny in Nairobi, highs of 23 and lows of 14 today. Cloudy conditions at 15 in Nyeri, highs of 22 and lows of 13. 13 will also be the low in Nakuru, where it's cloudy at the moment at 15. It'll rise to highs of 25. 22 will be the high in Eldoret. It's mostly cloudy at 15 and 27. The high in Kisumu, mostly cloudy conditions currently at 21. 21 also in Kakamega, highs of 26 and lows of 14. Mostly sunny conditions in Mombasa this morning, highs of 29 and lows of 22. We're looking at lows of 24 in Malindi, where it's raining at the moment, highs of 28. Mostly sunny conditions at 19 in Kampala, highs of 26 and lows of 15. And partly sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam, highs of 30, lows of 21. We're looking at 19 as the high in Johannesburg, where it's sunny at 10 and light rain at 25 in Lagos, highs of 30 and back down to lows of 25. It's sunny in Kinshasa at 22. We'll see highs of 30 and lows of 21.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, what are we looking at here? A little bit on Langata Road coming out into the city. Little traffic also building up right around the connect between Kiambu Road and the superhighway. Today, it has looked pretty good. I don't think we have too much of an issue in terms of traffic, unless we're totally in the dark. In that case, do let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter, text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This conversation continues. In the room is Wanjiru Gekonyo Nduoko, Eric Latif, and our guest is Mule Musau, National Coordinator, Elections Observations Group, ELOG, talking about credible elections in 2022. The question that you asked again as we went to the break.
So how are we getting more Kenyans involved in these conversations that we are having, or these conversations that are starting in certain quarters, to get Kenyans to either reignite or to ignite from the beginning?
Okay. So our first approach when we coined up the national conference was to ensure that as many players, not just in the capital, but even in the fringes, were able to participate. We had 300 participants, both online and physically, and we had organizations which were represented from across the country. That was the first step. Then, of course, the widest reach in terms of the constituencies, women movements, we have youth organizations, we have the faith-led organizations. And that was the first step, like I said. So our next step is that we're going to have regional conversations of the same, in the same structure. So we go to Garissa and we call on the local political leaders in Garissa. We call on the local civil society in Garissa, and the various agencies. IBC should be represented by their regional coordinators. So we want to have then the local conversations moving forward. Then over a period of 3-4 months, then we have another national conversation again, just to apprise ourselves, where are we? So our plan is do a national event, move to the regions, gather as much information as possible, have another one, and then do these cycles all the way to the elections. So the conversation keeps moving, the conversation keeps being informed by the previous one and what is happening on the ground. Right now we are talking about having new commissioners at the IEBC. by the next conversation, that should be something that we have already made an assessment of in terms of the process and given our demands and our recommendations moving forward. So by having a live conversations, by having a regional conversations, and by ensuring that there's the widest stakeholder engagement in the process, then we can be able to reach as many Kenyans as possible.
Yeah, Mule, so I think you mentioned that you'll be monitoring, which I think ILOC has been doing that. One of the key things is the role of technology, as you mentioned.
Yes.
So we are talking about, in the first instance, there is the register. Last time there was no agreement on what the register was, where it was, and who was on it. And this has been a thorny issue that has continued. What's going to happen there? Then there is the actual technology that's going to be used. Kenya runs the most expensive elections. There's irregularities in procurement. We've seen a disparaged institution continue to provide the technology in the by-elections. So what about the issue of technology? Is it going to let us down again? And then the last thing you mentioned is the data privacy. We've just seen recently that political parties are violating data privacy and are falsifying their membership lists. So really, even dialogue is good, well done, everyone's around the table, but even as we talk, these issues are still live. What do we need to see happen, and what can this platform do to make sure that these issues are dealt with?
Number one, yes, as ILOG, we have actually been making a number of observations, and I think one of the problems that from where I see it we've had is a problem of even dissemination of information that could be helpful in changing how even the attitudes of Kenyans. In 2017, let me give you an example. In 2017, the KPMG did a voter register audit, and they found out a number of issues which needed to be corrected before the elections. ELOG did its own independent voter audit, register audit, after the elections, and our findings indicate that we went through that election without correcting the issues which have been addressed by KPMG, which have been brought about by KPMG. So you can see already there is a problem in terms of the voter register. And one of the demands then moving forward from our setting is that we need a clean register. IBC is set to start the process of voter registration. Anytime they say they have gotten some funds, we demand they need to be given more funds, because that register not only needs to be audited in the first instance, but it also needs to be cleaned and more and updated. By the last count in 2017, and I think after the Kibra elections, we still had over 5 million eligible voters, and they have increased by now. So we could be having, and I think I had the IBC talk about target voter registration of about 25 million Kenyans. So that you're talking about adding on top of that register. We have raised issues about how skewed the voter registration sometimes goes, because you find there are some regions which are getting more attention than other areas. So that affects the issue that I was talking about earlier on, in terms of trying to get as many people to participate in the electoral process, and you have to see that. So the reason why we are going partly to the regions is also to enlighten them on what they need to look out for. So that when you go to, like I said, in Turkana, in Garissa, especially these fringe areas, it was said in that conference, for instance, that Muslim young youth are not getting as much attention in terms of national IDs, the process that they go through to get a national ID and eventually to become a voter is much more, it has more hurdles than that of the other average young people, even when you're still talking about apathy among the young people. So there are some issues that need to be addressed specifically. Right. Technology is a big problem. IBC, and earlier we had advised that we thought that the best thing was not really employ a lot of technology in elections. Best practices across the world. Germany went back on technology because, and you can see the problem that even the US, one of the most developed countries in the world, has had with technology. It is a very dangerous area to play, especially in the developing world. So we have advised that if there's going to be any technology, it needs to be the simplest technology. If it's about voter, that is something that a voter can be able to understand. But more than that is that we want it to be a system that can be verified. Those are the major problems that we had in 2017. For instance, the transmission of results. Are you going to employ a system that is opaque to everybody who can be able to monitor? As monitors, we admitted we could not see anything in terms of the transmission process in 2017. We had never had the expertise to be able to do this. So don't bring in something that makes elections more complex. So let them start the process early. There's already a process which has been ongoing in terms of getting vendors to supply IABC with the KIMS kits. We need to see that process being finalized in good time, so that if there's going to be procurement, again, because our procurement processes are always protracted, there's ample time for us to be able to conduct that procurement process and have a testing and training processes which are done well before the elections. If you have these things, if you're having this conversation around technology in March next year or February next year, it will be too late.
Yeah.
And we cannot be able to now to even start thinking about holding
procuring and getting it all on the ground. I like the way we're all able to identify and highlight the issues about voter registration, issues about the credibility of the voter register, issues about the preparation of the entire electoral process, how to empower the IEBC to be truly independent. All those, and the voter participation. If you look at the elections, voters participate in the elections. If you look at the elections, when voters are on the queue, they also, Kenyan voters, will allow an elderly person to come and cut the line. Somebody who's come from hospital and they've been brought in, they cut the line. Our culture allows us to participate peacefully in voting. I think when we discuss the credibility of an election, we skirt around the main issue, which for me is politicians, political interference. And I'm not just saying those who are holding the reins of power at the time, but those who have influence, political influence at the time. Because right now we are discussing IEBC. There's been a conversation about, reforming IEBC. There's been this back and forth about what do we need to do with this IEBC as we recruit the 4 commissioners. These are the 3. Do we really trust them? What are we going to do about the IEBC CEO? He's been in an acting capacity for the longest time. What are we doing about the secretariat to empower the secretariat? It's all part of political interference with the process. Politicians have gotten to a point where they believe that they are the most important stakeholder in an election, yet the voter is also a very important stakeholder in an election. And the whole conversation is about, the politician coming to commit. I don't even think the politician should be coming to commit that I'm going to play by the rules.
That should be a given.
It's in the law. The law stipulates the rule. It's not about your goodwill in participating in this. It is the law. And as long as we skirt around this issue, the issue of credibility of an election will always be subjective. It is my own interpretation of credibility of the election. I being the political actor, not even the voter.
So what are you going to do to tame this culture?
Well, first, I don't know whether I want to call it is it a word like futilist? But futile, the futileness of how Eric is asking this is what concerns me, because when you say that the politician, you're very right. You're actually spot on in terms of interference. Is meddling in the election process has been the biggest problem, whether it is from the executive. Or whether it's from these other politicians. But now, when you talk about the questions about commitment and the fact that it's supposed to be a given. So it's a given, and it's been a given from 63. So exactly what then, how do you flog them to action on this given? How do you make them work? And that's why I was saying, where we think, first, of course, it's important for them to be, I don't think they have a sense of shame where you make them commit publicly. Everybody's listening, and then they still go back on their promises and their commitments. But then how more are you able to work on them to ensure that there is a return in terms of that commitment and what they are supposed to do? So civil society approach has been from a demand process, demand-driven. Work the social masses, because they're the ones who must then ask for accountability from their leadership. It is them who make the choices of the person who gets into office. You know, if, as observers, sometimes we sit back and say, we observed an election, people made their choice.
Yep.
We can be able to identify some issues about that leadership, but you cannot speak about it because in a democracy, then the majority have had their say. So we can talk until the cows come home. By the end of the day, they have made their choice that this is the person they want to be. So now the only place is you hold them accountable to their statements, to their performance. We have raised questions, for instance, I think very many people have been raising questions about the issue of court orders, that we have court orders which are being disobeyed. When they are disobeyed, we can only hope the judiciary does its job like Maraga did by saying, I'm giving an advisory that we need to break parliament because there's a rule which has been broken throughout. Now, you want to hold the president accountable. We have held the president accountable in terms of even the appointment of the commissioners because we felt there was mischief.
Yep.
We never needed a new law to get the new commissioners in place. Yet IBC has not been having those commissioners for over a year. The National Commission of Human Rights, even as we speak, has problems in terms of getting commissioners on board. These processes are at the executive in parliament level. So unless you ask questions about them and they account for it and somebody takes them to court, and the courts decide that you have exhausted your processes, so you go back to citizen agency again. Can people rally?
That's where now you asked, how do we hold them accountable? I think by that, you called it political education. And I don't know what you'll explain the difference between civic and political in your interpretation. But that's it. We have a lot of effort being committed by ILOG, by the other institutions, by the civil society on making sure that the people feel empowered.
Yes.
Return the power to the people. Because currently, as we speak, in our entire electoral process, power right now rests with the political leadership. And it has not worked. In 1997, one of the things, yes, 1997 IPPG, it was a good thing. But you know what it was? It was a Band-Aid. It was calming down the tensions ahead of the 97 election so that, okay, as we go into this one, let's all feel like we have played a part in it. But who are they? They were all politicians playing a part in choosing who sits in the commission. There should have been a follow-up into meaningful and entrenched electoral reforms in the country. Yes, so we had a constitutional commission that is now the IEBC, but in terms of safeguarding it and ring-fencing everything around IEBC to make sure that it's totally independent, we were not able to do that. We are in this problem today because IEBC is not an independent electoral and boundaries commission. IEBC is manipulated left, right, and center by the political class. Same thing we were told by Johan Kriegler in 97. ECK was not an independent body. It was manipulated by everybody who was taking part in that election in a political class. For us to get our power back, I think that's where ELOG and the others should be playing a role in bringing the power back to me, the voter. Remove it from that guy. That guy coming to commit that, I stand up today. I commit that, in the next election, we are going to play.
Well, I think the issue of elite capture and elite consensus, which is what some of us we think about when we hear about the BBI, is a big problem, a monster in this country. So that politicians have usurped the role that the citizens are supposed to be playing, and then they are even trying to structure it now, to put it in a structural form that you can have this kind of agreement in terms of how we can share power. So when it comes to one of the things that you've seen, and I think Kenyans are very excited about, is that if this was the idea then behind the BBI, the elite consensus, then you can see first there was a blow which it was dealt, whether it was a legal process or not. But I'm also happy, and in one of our partners, South Consulting, Professor Karuti Kanyinga, has done research which we will be, I think, sharing very soon. And among the statistics which coming through is that over 60% of Kenyans did not want the BBI, and still do not want the BBI. That would speak to a sentiment that is out there because of the national poll which was conducted. So even as people go back to the courts to appeal on the BBI, chances are Kenyans will stand against it. And I think that's where a lot of effort by the civil society then needs to get in. And when you ask the question about the difference between political education and civic education just informs, basically just informing you, these are your rights, these are your responsibilities. Political education actions you. You know, it tells you what you will not entertain from the local administration and what you must demand from the local administration to ensure that your rights are respected and whatever is supposed to come to you comes to you. It talks about majority of the work that Wanjiru herself does about social accountability, even ensuring that monies which are going to the counties, we are able to question how their usage. Now that empowers the citizen. That makes the citizen ask the right questions. That is the space that we still don't have. I think the biggest problem in this country with citizens is functional illiteracy. You know, people are not moving. They're not actioning. They're not moving to the chief. They're not moving to the member of parliament and say, there is a budget which has been allocated to you. Where is it and how have you applied it?
Could this be, Mule, because there is still this section of Kenyans, and it could be a really large one, that feel that nothing will be done should they actually action some of these things. We're just having the conversation previously that there are those who do not vote because they don't believe that their vote will count, that they believe that these decisions have already been made, that because they have not seen the impact of a previous action, or that they've not seen an action take effect because of what they may have said, done, or where they have gone, that then they will be reluctant about performing that same action in the future or adding any kind of fire to it. So then people start to ask questions. Does my vote count? How will I then be able to participate and then add to a credible election? Does it really matter? If we have this political interference that we're talking about now, then who am I? Why should I be bothered? So does it really count? Does it really matter? And that could be the reason why. That you're saying that we have, function-wise, an illiterate political society right now. Could it be that one of the reasons is that previously, historically, that they've not seen any kind of action, so they are likely to not participate in the future?
I don't know from a statistical point of view whether we have a problem with apathy. But I don't know whether that's the reason why people may not want to participate. Because from a statistical point of view, we have been having a register which has been expanding over time. Young people are coming in and they are in the register. In fact, in the last election, we had very many young people who participated than before. So if you look at the statistics, there is an interest aspect. Even for young people, look at the members of county assembly in terms of the numbers of young people who are participating in those seats. So the numbers tell a different story.
But we also had a couple of weeks ago when political parties had names of Kenyans on their register who said they did not participate in that registration activity.
Well, of course,
so there are those who are saying that my name could be somewhere where I had no interest.
No, that's true. That's very true. Of course, those are issues that must be thrashed, because at the end of the day, there are some violations which are happening at the same time. But I'm talking about the other statistics like the voter register itself. It's been expanding over time. If IBC says, for instance, they are targeting 25 million, chances are they're going to go for over 24, 25, 23 million voters. And many of them will be new voters. So there are interest. And some of the studies that we are also doing are indicative of that there's going to be an increased interest even in the elections. The problem is not... I think Kenyans look at elections, and especially young people, I think they're looking at it as an opportunity for employment and such things. That's why they would want to participate, make some money even in the process, because there's a lot of voter bribery which goes on in the election, which is an offense by itself. So that could be the excitement. The problem is this other issue of understanding that as a Kenyan, I need to perform. Not for purpose of just an election or to join a political party, but because as a Kenyan, and Kenya is a going concern, I have to play my role in ensuring that Kenya moves. And I think...
Also understanding the... sorry. Are we saying then that Kenyans at this point not understanding their responsibility in terms of contributing to this process.
Yeah, so it's not apathy. It's not apathy as such. It's not apathy in terms of, I don't know, I'm disillusioned, nothing is happening. Well, they have never done anything. I mean, there's a lot of history to the fact that we're coming from a society, and I had Shiro talk about other countries like South Africa, which are much, the citizen agency is much better than ours. Zambia, I think you raise VAT in Zambia, everybody's in the streets. There's a level to which I don't know whether it's through the process of colonization and the neo-colonialism which happens afterwards, where there's still this over-reliance on Mkubwa.
Yeah.
The Mkubwa culture in the village. A boy becomes a millionaire in the village, suddenly he becomes the point of focus for everybody.
Yes.
He understands nothing about developmentalism within the village, but suddenly he's the one who's being called for all the harambes. He's the one who can even come and participate in a marriage ceremony as a guest of honor because of money. So there's this other aspect of not understanding the democratic reality that we are in as a country, and understanding how through democracy then you can prosper.
I think I fully agree with you. And in fact, we've had recently the death of some so-called captains of industry, luminaries, who have very controversial, really have made their wealth very controversially. And in many cases through benefiting off cartelism and really kind of predatory capitalism. Yet they are touted as captains of industry and almost role models. So we have really missed our culture and what we value is really flopsided, is upside down. Alongside that, good on this initiative, very important to occupy the space, but even as you're having the dialogues, the violations continue to happen. So really, what is the strategy to slay the beast? Because it's good to talk, it's good to have the regional dialogue, but the interests, the political interests are still undermining the processes. The citizens are not yet on board. What are the strategies to slay the beast? And should we be looking at 2022? What can we do by 2022? Or are we saying we are beginning a process now that really has a bit of a longer trajectory? What are your calculations around that?
It must be a long-term story. It cannot be a short-term. Short-term, I think we can just make small gains here and there in terms of what we can be able to ensure happens in 2022 that anchors a longer conversation for the long term, because it's as I usually call it sonkocracy. Sonkocracy, not in terms of usonko. The way in Nairobi there is this usonko thing. Want to get money quickly, shortcuts, and all that.
Narrative.
So that narrative is everywhere in the village, and people are thinking, well, I've seen the governor around. What can I be able to do to ensure that do I become his bodyguard? Can I volunteer to be? So everybody's looking. Despite the skills that we have, and we are in a country where even the skill sets that we have, we put a lot of effort in our education. For instance, for our sons and daughters and our brothers and sisters to become engineers, they don't become engineers. Ultimately, they do something else which is opportunistic in this country. And I think that, as Wanjiro says, is where we have a kind of a convoluted idea of what we call development. So I think the challenge is in how do we engage Kenyans in a manner that explains to them that through democracy we can thrive. Through a democratic process where we get good leadership, where we participate in civic and state affairs very robustly, we can actually be able to gain as a country. And those proceeds can come to the individual. Because that conversation is getting lost, and that's where Eric is saying, then there's this class which has appointed itself as the barons in the country, the political class. And therefore they're the ones who now decide what each of us is supposed to be getting. Even in terms of returns, what goes to who.
And we can see that. Criminal
and
cartels decide who becomes president.
How you are aligned. There's a question on social media. Somebody saying, is the election process already does it have an already predetermined outcome such that voting is just a formality and a way of, showing public participation? And this is not, if you think about the question that is being asked here and what we were talking about earlier with people saying, why should I participate?
Why should I vote?
It's because it's already pre-rigged. It's predetermined.
I think so.
And we've even had politicians talking about system and such.
People, by the way, are opting out. They are unhappy. 60% are unhappy, don't believe the system. The state has lost credibility. Political leaders are seen as what they are, criminal cartels. So people are unlikely to vote. Voter turnout is likely to be zero.
If you're listening to
conversations... Or not zero, but at least 40%.
Well,
if you're listening to the
I'll be there.
It's supposed to be low.
that are being had out here, that is just it. That there is a large number of Kenyans who are or critical in this process, who believe that the system, as it were, has already
decided who
will be president in 2022. So why should I bother?
And the
will
signs
my
they're
vote actually
reading,
count?
the signs they're reading are the ones you've said. They're looking at the IEBC failure to appoint. They're saying, you see.
See?
Then your issues about the register
BBI,
not cleaned
see
up.
what BBI is being pushed. Look.
BBI, you see.
Server not opened.
You see.
And even the,
why should I?
And even the political players themselves are pushing that narrative, the hustler narrative. You see, the system wants to rig us out, but we are going to fight and push back, and we're going to show them that we have the numbers. It's because the system is trying to show us that they have predetermined who the winner is. But if we rise up as a people, we shall rise up against the system.
I think we need a very strong political economy around what's going on now.
Politicians act pragmatic like Matatu people. They find a jam on Mombasa Road. They know we can pass by the side.
Yes.
The goal is, the objective here is just to get myself to the end, to point B, and that's how they operate. And you see, that's the kind of culture that we have also we are having now, even on the roads and in other spaces. So it's a culture. Their pragmatism tells them that if we arrange ourselves according to tribal hegemonies and cocoons, then we can be able to, we are clear that we are going to win. In fact, that arrangement, I remember, for instance, Ruto saying that that they did their mathematics in a plane between Nairobi and Eldoret when they were facing the ICC issues, and when they did the mathematics, they felt that given the numbers that they can be able to master, then they can be able to easily win the presidency, and they went on to form a political party, and they actually won the elections. So people, and they have had Mutai Ngunyi, I think, doing the tyranny of numbers. People just work out on these things. That's the mathematics that politicians are doing, irrespective of what you guys think.
Yep.
What's your mathematics?
Yes. So I think
what should our mathematics be then? Because these are also, we can also do mathematics.
There's an adage which says, not an adage, actually, election speak, which says that we expect electoral processes to be predictable and the electoral outcomes unpredictable. In Kenya, it is the reverse. So we have electoral processes which are unpredictable
and the
outcomes predictable.
We start with the answer.
So there you go in terms of the narrative about 2022 elections.
Let's take this break, Mule. So when we come back, we want to hold you for a bit longer into the next hour, right? So we can also hear from the people on what they think, the likelihood of us having a credible election next year, and what do we need to see so that everybody can feel that I'm going to participate in this. It's going to be a credible exercise, and the result shall be a verifiable one. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. We want to say thank you very much to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us since the top of the hour. The conversation continues on SpiceFM. Tune in to Spice, wherever you are. Malindi, 97.7. Nyeri, it's 90.9. And Eldoret, 96.7. 96.0 in Nakuru. 102.5 in Kisumu. Mombasa, 87.9. And Nairobi is 94.4. And if you are not near you already, you can still follow us on social media. SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We are live streaming the show there. It shall continue. Mule Musau is the National Coordinator, Elections Observation Group, ELOG. They had a meeting recently with the actors in the political process and the electoral process. There are commitments being made, and that's what we are discussing. What do we need to see next year so that we can have a credible election, so that then also everybody who participates in this can say, what I've seen is good. Dismas Bokua says, the tragedy of our politics is that the voter is largely emotional and irrational.
Goodness.
Largely emotional and irrational.
Emotional.
What do you think? 0719 012 or
Irrational's unfair.
SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Good morning. It's now 9 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. More than 5 million Kenyans managed to file their 2020 tax returns before the deadline. The Kenya Revenue Authority attributed the rise in number to enhanced taxpayers' sensitization on filing of tax returns and the measures put in place by the authority to facilitate taxpayers with the filing process. The authority also says the extension by their staff to work for more hours helped in supporting the exercise.
You can't always go back to the same persons, and they can't always be the ones shouldering the tax burden and tax-based expansion across all sectors. At some point in the past, we focused on landlords and other, but you'll be seeing a much more vigorous focus on tax-based expansion across all sectors, whether it's informal, whether it's the rental, whether it's the professional.
Moi Avenue, Globe Roundabout and areas around City Hall have been cited as some of the crime hotspots in Nairobi CBD. Area Police Boss Augustine Thumbe says they've increased the number of security personnel and patrols in the CBD in order to arrest individuals behind the muggings and kidnappings. He further says that border operators who assist the perpetrators in committing the crimes will be arrested. He has called on victims of such incidences to report to the police, as working together will assist in hastening the process of arresting such gangs.
We have increased security tremendously. Ni vizuri ukishapata ripoti yoyote unaona inahitaji kupeana kwa polisi, iwe piga ripoti. Hata kama huwezi kwenda mwenyewe physically kwa polisi, huwezi kosa namba ya polisi yoyote ambayo unaweza kupigia simu. We also want to make sure that all motorbikes belong to one area. For example, if it is Kayore, lazima wawe na wanasema shimo.
Police have launched a manhunt for a driver who disappeared from the scene of an accident after injuring 4 people. Regional Traffic Commander Hassan Osman says the driver of the private vehicle heading from Sotik to Keroka lost control and crashed into a ditch along the road. He says the 4 are receiving treatment in hospitals in Nyamira County. And finally, would you ease the burden of family planning off your wife by going for a vasectomy? Medic Charles Ocheng says the uptake of vasectomy as a family planning method in the country is low, despite the procedure being the easiest, safest and most effective. He says men should consider taking up the burden of family planning from women as a gesture of love, as methods adopted by women such as pills, implants and the IUD, also known as the coil, have multiple side effects.
Initially the uptake was very poor, but right now a lot of men are beginning to understand. Long time we used to do like maybe 0 or 1 in a month, but these days we do 10, 20 in a month, which is good. Their reproductive health has a direct impact on their women and even on their children. So as a guy to live in
That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
All right, much better right about 9 o'clock. I don't think much of an issue right now in terms of traffic. This is around the time it gets to a dull roar without too much drama right now. Coming out of Thika Road also looks like it has settled a little bit. Uhuru Highway then through from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout out towards Westlands. That looks okay. The CBD not too packed right now, so I think people are getting into the swing of things. But we'll keep an eye on it, all right? SpiceFM KE on Twitter, just in case anything does pop out at you from your neck of the woods. Text us also on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the
5
Situation
minutes
Room,
after 9.
the
Kenya's
only
biggest
way to
conversation
start your
continues.
day.
Today's proverb, anayetaka hachoki na akichoka keshapata. Anayetaka hachoki na akichoka keshapata. One who's craving for something does not get tired. And if they appear to have gotten tired, they got it. They got it. Never give up. That's the point. The conversation continues. Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wajiro Gekonyo, and our guest, Mule Musao, who is the national coordinator of the Elections Observation Group, talking about credible elections. And that's why we are asking you, what must we see to have credible elections in 2022? 0719-012-600 or SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So just as we read a comment by Dismas Mokua, who said the tragedy of our politics is that the voter is largely emotional and irrational. He went on to say the IEBC must create predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes, not two ways. And that's the same thing that you said. It's a mantra around elections, Mule. Barnabet says, my point is on the topic is, or rather a request, let the voters man the votes and even send the results to Nairobi. And only media and voters are enough for voting process. Any other government agents is a lie. It is a lie. Daniel Osiemo Ondiere says, Kenyans will be on the brink of war if their presidential candidates will include. And he says, Raila and Ruto. Because these two, none of them is going to accept defeat no matter what.
Wow.
Very interesting.
They're very
interesting conversations. I think for me, one of the things about the next elections, there's something which is very interesting, which was shared by the chair of the IBC when they were launching their strategic plan, and they say that they want. Well, the law says that elections are final at the polling station. Now, I want to go on with that viewer who is saying that then people need to man their votes. The idea of even having observers, in ELOG we call ourselves citizen observers because we have trained over 25,000 Kenyans up to now to be able to watch over an election, especially at the local level. So the idea is usually to empower this person with the skills that allows him to be able to make an assessment of what is happening. But more importantly is that we want to draw these observers from the local area. So these are not Nairobi-based people. They're in Turkana, they're in all over the place. So the idea is, can the citizens themselves, actually that would be the highest achievement for citizen observation. Can all citizens in the country have the opportunity to be able to man the elections themselves? If as Chebukati said, that they will allow the media to even transmit results from those polling stations directly and tabulate them, and then we have those citizens who are monitoring the elections, who want to take pictures of the results forms and they can be able to share with their friends, then we'll terminate that process there. So the issue of the opaque electronic systems and other things does not apply. So that is an issue that you can be able to deal with at that particular level. And I think that would go away in making elections a much more people-driven process. We have also demanded on the IBC to make all the other processes people-driven. It's not enough to be able to say we have rolled out a campaign on voter registration, on education, and all the other things. But you need to go to the people and ask them, how do you want us to do this? Which is the most effective ways of working with this? And you work with the local committees. IBC must be seen in a village. If it's not being seen in the village, then whose election are we working with?
Right.
So these are some of the things that we are trying to move some of the agents, even the ORPP. Can you move from Nairobi and go to where the people are? Let's see the elections be conducted there. If the polling station is the end game for elections, then how have we created a level of awareness in that village, all of us, the agents included, to ensure that those people are the ones in charge of that process.
Right.
So I would support that comment.
Yeah, 2 questions. ELOG has trained, and I'll stop saying you because we've been part of ELOG.
Yes.
Has trained 25,000 observers. If we proceed on the thinking that elections have started, why? Because the electioneering period is part of the elections.
Yes.
And
it's
in
an
fact,
election cycle.
we're in the cycle.
Yes.
Why are these? And then we have 25,000 observers. If you divide by wards, we have 1,450 wards nationwide. That's about 16 to 18 people per ward, which is a very good number.
Yes.
Okay, I know they're not that evenly spread, but just figuratively speaking. So why don't they start observing now? Why wait? Yeah, so that we can begin getting this mechanism in place, monitoring who said what, these ones are speaking out of turn, So what things can they begin to monitor now so that we don't have to wait? And then second question, resources. Does this initiative have resources? Because like we were saying earlier, civil society in this country, unfortunately, depends on external support.
Yes.
South Africa have a fund from which civil society can draw. The PBO Act that has never been operationalized, that civil society worked hand in hand with the Kibaki administration to develop and get passed, has never been operationalized. It also has a fund so that civil society can be independent and can be funded alongside, because all government processes should have that fund. Auditor General Edward Ouko actually wanted to set up a citizen auditing mechanism. So where is the money? Is the money there?
First to even found issue much further, there is under Article 88 of the Constitution, which gives IBC its mandate, they are supposed and required to facilitate observers. So that's an unexplored issue because facilitation is not accreditation. There's a difference. Facilitation is all those things together, and we can be able to demand that we are also supported. Or citizens can demand that to observe this process, we need to be facilitated. So therein lies an opportunity to develop and put a fund that will be able to support such activities. To answer the first question, in terms of are these people operational? Do they have to wait for funds? First, of course, we can having resources, these borrowed resources, to be able to put in an observation framework across the country for an entire election period is too astronomical. It's very difficult for us to be able to get such kind of funds. Majority of the time, and because of this funding, because of these problems and the gaps that we have in the funding, you are much more active closer to the elections. But what we have tried to talk to our observers about, and this is one of the first sessions of the training, is that this observation is a patriotic duty. We are not doing it. We have never paid an observer. We tell them we facilitate allowances that allow you to move about if you need to move about, but you don't pay any salary. And based on that thinking, that becomes part of the citizen agency that we are talking about. So we ask them, when there are activities in your local area, can you be able to give us information? It's actually very interesting that in the Migori senatorial by-election, which happened, we never ever send anybody, but all our observers sent to us the information on what was happening. And we never paid a single cent to anybody. That would be our wish, that we can activate all these cells, if you call them cells, in every of the wards, as you're saying, to be able to give information. And some of them have been volunteering information. So it's work in progress in terms of making sure that everybody, and there's many other people also participate. So that's a goal. But I think there's a bigger, of course, responsibility to Kenyans, even whether they are trained or not, to ensure that the processes, election processes that are happening within their spaces, and not just election, but the political, because the political election is a political process. Those politicians who are coming and, as Wanjiru was saying, uttering these things out of turn and all that, they can actually be reported. NCIC, I think, has set up what do you call that number?
A short code.
Yes, that allows citizens to actually call in on people calling who are propagating hate speech and such things. So I think that's the questions about citizen agency. Can we get information that can be acted upon?
How do you shield your observers or the observers that you've trained from politicians? And here's the thing. Political parties also send observers to the agents to the poll.
Yes.
And of course, the agents have a brief. You are protecting the interest of this political party.
Yes.
And our candidates here. Now, the independent observer who has been trained by ELOG is looking at it holistically, not political party. I'm not biased against you. I'm just looking for the interest of the voter. How do you shield this person that you're not paying?
Well, apart from training, one of the things that we have made sure that we do with our observers is that we give them tools that they need to respond to. They don't give us their views. It's not a qualitative feedback. It is quantitative. It is something that we want you to tick the right boxes. How many people have you seen? How many women have you seen? Has this happened? Just tick here. We try as much as possible to avoid where they have to give us their own opinion. Because chances are, and you're right, chances are we are recruiting these people from villages. Who do we know is a ODM member and who is the Jubilee member? And I've said this before, that you still cannot be able to be overly sure that you're getting everything right. But the question now goes back to the citizen, because I usually say in a polling station we have about 8 officials of IBC who are Kenyans, number one. A security person inside that who is a Kenyan.
Yep.
Media personalities who are inside the police who are Kenyans. Agents who are Kenyans, and observers who are Kenyans. Should those people conspire to rig an election, you have nothing you can be able to say about that.
Yeah.
Should that entire team sit together and say, we have agreed that these are the numbers? Remember, even the presiding officer usually advises the agents when they are on the agreement in terms of what constitutes a valid vote, a valid ballot or not. And they agree. And if you go around the country, you'll find that there are places where they agree that tick which goes out of the box is okay. Another place they say no. We don't want that. So some of these results are even changed by that agreement inside. So should a polling station be held hostage? You have nothing, is nothing. Because you have the media inside. And in fact, that's a conversation I think which was being had, was it 2013 or 2017, where the question was, but we had media people also there. We had observers. Apart now from the international team, which could be the aliens, and they are usually not everywhere, then you can actually hold hostage a polling station and decide everybody here is 10K for you, and let's put all these votes into this particular area. In that case, there's very little you can be able to do about that. Then Kenyans have conspired to steal their own elections. That's the most you can be able to say about that. But what we try to do is, let's give them a tool. We'll put some overlier questions, which allow us to be able to detect whether somebody is telling a lie or not in that tool. But that's the best we can be able to do. Apart from the training and giving you the tool and hoping that as a patriot you shall do your duty, we can't go beyond that point. So the issue now goes back to the Kenyan to act as a Kenyan. Acheze kama yeye, as they say.
Credibility. On this one day, the second Tuesday of August, in the 5th year, we are holding 6 elections.
Yes.
1,450 wards. How many polling centers?
40,883.
40,883 in 2017 polling centers.
Yes.
Okay? All of this, first of all, in terms of the professionalism of the IEBC, they never mix up the votes that the ballots that should be going here, they go to a different area.
Yes.
You hardly hear that. You hardly hear that the IEBC officials who were supposed to be manning this particular polling center woke up late, came in drunk. You hardly hear that. That we started voting, we started counting, and these guys didn't have lamps. Hardly hear that. So voting happens largely peacefully and smoothly. Counting happens largely peacefully and smoothly. Elections start being announced, the results at the local level. The ward winners are announced, constituency winners are announced, county winners are announced. the national vote is transmitted to Nairobi? Why is it that we see largely the contest at the national level and not so many contests being lodged at the local level? Is it a credibility of just that one as opposed to all 6? Or is it a transmission issue? Where does this credibility fall short at just that one ballot?
Because you hold all our hopes and aspirations on the presidential vote. And that becomes a big issue. Because from the last, if you go to the disputes which are raised on the elections from the last election, I think there were 388 or 89 petitions. Majority of them are upheld. So even from that jurisprudence, there is an issue in terms of those other processes. The presidential vote, however, was nullified. We put all our stakes on the presidential vote. There are a number of reasons. Number one is that remember, members of county assembly, the MPs, and all the other guys have their people on the ground. You know, they are, that's a local setting, and they nearly know each other. So they are very vigilant on their elections. Then they send the so-called, there are these super agents who are not supposed to be guarding the presidential vote. The vote of the presidency is like an aggregation of all the agents. They all say, okay, now that we have taken care of our own, then can we be able to also observe this other one? And then now, that's the only vote which also has an electronic transmission process. The others are not transmitted electronically by law. So again, there is another extra process. It is not declared at the polling station. It's supposed to be, if now we were, as Chebukati says, we were doing all our final results at the polling station, and the only question now is a question of aggregation. ELOG will have a result, the media will have a result, political parties will have the results, we'll all even compare notes. But because this has to go to an aggregation center, the regional, the constituency tallying centers, and then to the county, and then to the national tallying center process. And there's a verification process because it's a contested vote. Then there are these now other things which start happening, like for instance the transmission. You start getting issues around the transmission. You break laws on those. The court has no choice to other than nullify the election. So I think for me the big question is we are not. This extra complexity around the presidential vote needs to be undone. It requires to be undone. It needs to be as simple as the others. And remember, again, there have been questions about when you do the tallying of all these results. How come they do not all tally? I mean, you expect that everybody is... remember the question
if you're all observing and counting, you should have the same numbers across the board.
If you have 6 ballots, and that question was asked in the High Court,
the court
you expect the tally
Court.
to be the same. So suddenly, why are we seeing different? Now, let me say something which is, I think, we need to caution ourselves based on our recent observations of the by-elections. A number of things now are starting to happen. So we are talking about an electronic process and other complexities which defraud Kenyans of a resort. But now an emerging trend is that we are going back to the old ways. So number one, violence is escalating. We are not seeing a lot of violence in by-elections. Now it's happening. Secondly, we are seeing officials of the IEBC being harassed. And that was not happening before. And now, as you saw in the Juja by-election, even disruption of the process is happening at the tallying center. And ballots are being stuffed. So now we are going a full cycle to where we came from. Where we were coming with already stuffed ballots and replacing boxes and all. So we are starting to go that. So from where we sit, because it's a trend which is emerging, we saw it in Nakuru, London Ward, we saw it in Matungu, Kabuchai, and now in Juja. So it's people start testing waters using this by-election.
Absolutely.
So now we need to be very careful about the next election, especially when it comes to such issues. Still, it's about political interference, and you said it, Latif, when you talked about the politicians coming into the process. Who are the people who are interfering in the process in Juja? The governor, the woman rep. You go to Matungu, we have a former CS who even slapped a member, the presiding officer. We saw a woman who was being frog-marched in Nakuru, again by politicians. You see, that's where the problem is. So that is where we need to sort out our mess.
But are there indicators? I mean, because when we looked at what happened in Kabuchai and then Matungu, this was what the sentiment was, that if this is what is happening right now, it's an indication of what will happen in 2022.
Exactly.
Whether we're looking at the violence, whether we're looking at credibility,
Voter
whether we're looking
bribery,
at free and fair,
whatever.
bribery, all sorts of things. This is just on a small scale. What is going to happen on a grand scale?
And
It's a
what has
testing.
been the
2022.
repercussions?
We are
It's
looking
a
into the
testing.
future.
And so far, a good question about repercussions, because we've been asking, we expected the CS, the former CS, to have been arrested, been charged. As things stand, but the agencies which are involved, all the feedback they've given us is that investigations are still ongoing.
Of course they are.
So they will always go on. So no action. And you see, one of the biggest problems, even in terms of credibility of the vote, the question about electoral offences. Somebody getting away with hate speech, people get away with voter bribery, people get away with violence. Violence is an election offense. Sometimes these things happen, especially those two, violence and voter bribery, happen, and we assume it's an election process. Yet it is very clear in the Electoral Offences Act that these are offences and there are perpetrators who can be arrested. Now, the regime around ensuring that we can take action on these perpetrators has never been hard and fast. And that's where part of the problem is. So that at the end of the day, then we are not, if people, and the disillusionment that you talked about. So if people are seeing that the person who threw a stone is still in the village.
Yes.
Walking about.
The person who burnt a polling station is still walking about. Why would they believe in the process?
The person who actually roughed up a woman IEBC officer is still
at large.
An IEBC declared an election a winner to this election. But I've never really recovered from that. That we have somebody who's been sworn in as an MP for Matungu, and yet this is what we saw on the ground. Completely against the law. I want to speak in defense of technology and say, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It increases, it introduces another level,
A black box.
which could then be misused and interfered with.
And we saw that.
Also, this level could also be providing the verification level, because if we just go 100% manual, voting is manual. The only thing that we have is the voter identification, which is now electronic because the voter register is electronic. The voter identification and verification. Voting is manual. Counting is manual. Transmission then is the other one where we are saying electronic. You can check back and say, this is what happened. This is the result that was logged in, which is manual, and how was it interfered with in between to the other end, as opposed to carrying back ballot boxes or declaring a winner there and doing all these other things. So
the problem is the lack of counting at the polling station.
It happens at the polling center.
The counting is happening
the
there.
presidential.
Even
they
the
do
presidential.
count. No,
Everything
they
is
still count.
Everything
is
else
done
is
there.
counted.
It's only that it's
What
not
about
declared
the
there.
The
It's
results are
declared.
not declared at the
They
polling
are
station.
transmitted.
Yes, transmitted.
It's not declared as final.
And the form.
It
but
is
the
announced,
form,
and
what
the form
about
is signed by
the
agents.
form is signed.
It's not just declared. So this is the result, but we are not calling that. We are not saying
Yes.
that in this polling center, Raila
Winner
Odinga
is,
has
yeah.
won.
So this is a what form?
The 34.
A
34.
34 at
From
the polling
34A.
station.
And then it is scanned as it is
Yeah.
and transmitted.
So there's a check.
So there's a check, and you can even go back and audit and see, so at what point was it scanned, at what point was the send button pressed, at what point was the receive button pressed. We can check. The problem is the politician again, because they sit somewhere in the middle,
Interfering with that process.
and it's not just one side. It is even those that are complaining that this process has been rigged, is because they came in and they were not able to enter at the point they wanted to enter.
They weren't able to rig or whatever.
They were not able to interfere. The other person has beat them in the interference. I think that's, for me, that's why I see the problem.
Again, you've hit the point on the head. The question about who gets there first.
Yes.
Remember when, was it Chebukati who, before announcing the 2017 election, said, we have a problem with people are hacking into the server.
Yes.
He actually made a press statement to say that there are people who are interfering in the server. And confirmed reports indicate that everybody was getting into the server.
Yes.
not just one side. Everybody was trying to get their hands into the server. And these are the problem with now technology. And I think what I need to qualify in terms of technology is that I have no problems with technology because I think it can be able to make the system much more efficient. What we need is simple technology, which allows everybody to be in the same page. See, why do people trust M-Pesa? It's a very complex system, but it is made simple in the eyes of the peasant who sends 100 shillings and then he has the other person saying, I've received.
Yes.
You see, that is the simplicity of the process. It verifies itself because I said, Undu, 1,000 shillings, she calls me and tells me I've received my money.
Yeah.
Apart from the small charges here and there, which again we have been made aware of, that's transparency. So I expect there's going to be some charge here and there. So that is the simplicity of a system. Now, you want to send results from 40,883 polling stations. You know some regions have a problem with networks. You have those issues that have not been sorted out. And you're not the agency which even sorts that problem. It's another agency which has its own bureaucracy. You have corporates who are also part of the process. Remember, this is a sovereign process of the people. Corporates are private hands. Okay? Vendor locking and this story of... OT more for we have servers we are sleeping or these are issues which are brought by private hands in the process. You want a public process to be as public driven as possible, as much the entire of it. If the entirety of it can be a public driven process, that's where you get the assurances. The minute you bring in these other hands, then there are some unseen issues. Invisible hands which are doing manipulations without your knowledge. And that's where the interference comes, because now the politician is sitting in a place where he knows this system. He knows who to talk to. The voter is only waiting for the results to be counted. That's why I went to a polling station in Ghana where there were the agents, and they actually do it in a very beautiful way in that village, because everybody counts. So the presiding officer picks a ballot. Everybody says one, two, and if anybody in the crowd confuses, they say we start all over again. I found that to be very interesting. And some of the guys, because of the counting goes late into the night, had even pegs holding their eyelids so that they can remain open. I found that very interesting. That's a people process.
Yes.
So should we want to go to that? Maybe not.
Necessary.
But the issue is, can the public protect their vote? Can we ensure that the public is informed about the entirety of the process? The minute you get into a corner, we don't know what
and
has
it's
happened.
a dark corner.
It's a dark corner.
And there's no mirror there.
So what you're saying is that, because obviously we've talked about many things here, but the biggest missing link is the political.
Yes.
Right? The biggest problem is the
meddler
political.
is the politician.
If we were to proceed as is, with all the challenges we have, and I won't now talk about violence because electoral violence is different, but let's talk about the credibility of the vote. If we were to have the elections, these 6 elections in a month's time, and citizens were to say, yes, we're going to guard our vote, we are going to be there and we'll put the pegs and we'll sit and we'll stay out. First of all, we're not even allowed to be around the polling station. So that process really can't work.
Of course.
What can we do? Because from this discussion, I think our problem is political. Yet the observers are there observing the technical process, but the political shenanigans take place outside of this place. They happen before and they happen outside that room, the bribery and everything. So are we really watching the right thing?
No, watching the technical is important because it allows you to examine and assess the process itself. Because let me tell you, you don't watch. Why we're talking about this issue of even some of the offenses, some of the fraud processes revisiting again, like the ballot stuffing and everything, is that politicians keep testing the waters on every segment of the process.
What can work?
If you why fraud, electoral fraud, moved away from polling day, into voter registration, into education, into abuse of incumbency and such things, is because people watch the election is watched.
So you can't steal.
So
that
stealing
day
from there,
is
but
very
you
hard.
see, in the process, in the introduction of the technology, we introduce a process of an E-day, which is not watched. You see, the transmission of resources is not watched. So they are vigilant on the entire process, and they are seeing where the black boxes are.
Yeah.
So they are sitting up and saying, wow, let's introduce. And that's why it's Kriegler advised, don't change laws close to the elections because it introduces very many things which you're not aware about. Don't bring technology, don't change management of elections close to the elections. Because again, you don't know whether the commissioners are coming in with a script.
Yep.
You know, they're coming late into the day.
You don't have time to vet them and understand them.
You don't have time to be able to understand, and even to build a culture around them.
Yeah.
Those issues are things that politicians are holding sway of. And unless now we can interrogate, we can walk every step of the way. You talked about the handicap that civil societies are having in terms of funding and even the interference that the government is also having in terms of how the funding comes through. That's part of the process. Because with a civil society which cannot be able to be vigilant across the process, with compromised political actors who are opportunistic in nature and they'll keep moving to the right side, then who watches the vote?
Yep.
You see, now, at the end of the day, now the process is left to the system people, and the system people know which button to punch. So it's a shifting. They're shifting goalposts all the time.
Encourage us. You can't leave us on that note.
Well,
encourage us.
And I'm not a pessimist. In fact, that's the reason why I'm saying let us not think in terms of saying because we are watching the technical, stop watching. Let the technical be watched and monitored throughout. The only thing that we need to do is to devise a way in which we want to deal with the political agents. And part of the process is what we were saying. As much as it may look futile, we have an engagement with them. Even Moi, for him to leave power, people had to engage with him at some point. And ultimately, he ceded ground. It's a question of sitting very close with these politicians, telling them we're watching, running. Okia Mtata has gained reputation because of his agency. You know, he keeps running, checking on this and checking the other. I think I've sat in very many political spaces where when they are thinking about something, they say, but Kina Mtata will. You know, you see, that's already a check by itself. The fact, if you can have now more people working on those spaces, ensuring that where public interest litigation is needed, then we are all able to move very quickly, like the BBI process, and that is done. Then it keeps a check on these processes throughout, and we keep reminding them. Then, of course, the most important for me, and I think that's where the answer lies, we still go back to citizen agency.
Right.
Because there's no way this country is going to move. Civil society sometimes even dismissed as, you guys, who pays the piper, calls the tune. So you guys are funded by the Russians. The Russians
and you're injecting external influence into the country's political dispensation.
So fund them.
Yeah. So either you fund us, the citizens fund, and you know some of these people, luminaries you are calling, they should be funding. You know, I've actually approached a number of local institutions and individuals and asked, why is this not a patriotic duty? Why should ELOG look for funds outside the country when you are a Kenyan who can say, this is my position? You know, I want to give money so that our processes are credible. We need to bring everybody on board. The middle class in this country does not participate in electoral processes in any way.
But we reserve the right to complain
whether
about
it
things
is
having
about
gone wrong.
the vote, whether it is that complaining, whether it is funding, whether it is any commitment. They are very, in fact, that's the most apathetic team that we have here. And they are the change makers in very many other countries. They're the ones who can, they're the intelligentsia, you know, for everybody else. And yet they don't participate in the process. That's the class. Don't even talk about young people. That's the class which has the biggest problem that we have. So I think for us, the movement towards creating that agency, politically conscious Kenyan, who can be able to make sure, hold all the leadership, not just the political leadership, but all leadership, including even religious leaders, to account. Then now we start seeing the start of something new. And the hope now is we can now arrest a number of these issues which keep bedeviling us every 5 years.
Very well said, Mule. Very well said. You know, every morning here we talk about the real pandemic. the real pandemic being corruption in very many other ways. And one of, just like you've said, when we don't participate, when we don't actively participate by financing, by engaging, by also seeing like supporting Okia Umtata, then we are enabling the real pandemic.
Yes, very true.
Thank you very much for joining us. Mule is the national coordinator for the Elections Observation Group. We'll invite you again, Mule.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
That was great.
Time for us to take a break. 20 minutes to 10 o'clock. Keep it right here. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they're getting per year, how much inconvenience they're causing. As much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a Fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge suka koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the
Spice and everything nice. Everything nice.
Spice up your life.
It's mostly sunny in Nairobi at 19. It'll be that
The
way for
weather
most parts
with
of today, highs of 23 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions at 17 in Nyeri, highs of 22, lows of 13. 13 will be the low in Nakuru, where it's cloudy at 17. It's cloudy as well at 17 in Eldoret, going to highs of 22 and lows of 11. 27 will be the high in Kisumu, where it's mostly cloudy at 22. And that's the case in Kakamega as well, going to highs of 26 and lows of 14. Raining in some parts of Mombasa, 26, highs of 29 and lows of 22. And we're looking at light rain in Malindi as well at 26, highs of 28. 26 will be the high in Kampala, where it is mostly sunny at 22. We're looking at sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam, to go to highs of 30 and lows of 21. 12 degrees and sunny in Joburg, highs of 19 and lows of 12. 30 will be the high in Lagos, where it's raining at 25. Cloudy conditions at 22 in Kinshasa, to go to highs of 30 and lows of 22. It's raining in Beijing at 27, highs of 30 and lows of 21. 22 will be the high in Paris today. It's cloudy at 14. It's also cloudy at 14 in London, highs of 22 and lows of 14. Mostly clear conditions now early morning in New York, highs of 30 and lows of 21.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
So a spot of traffic along Limuru Road, just past the village market and then heading out into the city. Of course, going Wagari Mathai Way is the best option now when you get to that area. We haven't seen too much in terms of crazy traffic this morning. Hopefully it remains that way for most parts of today. But we're going to keep an eye on things. Just in case it does get out of whack, you can get in touch on SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice and everything nice. Alright, okay.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Let's just deal with the very basics. You went to school, you were taught about malaria, you were told malaria comes from mosquito, and then there's a specific type of mosquito that is even more harmful than the others, and what to do to avoid getting malaria. So let's just remind you, what is it that you should do? Prevention of malaria. Sleep under a net that is treated. Spraying insecticides at home. Spraying on windows and screening the windows. Ensuring the pregnant women get tested and they receive malaria vaccine early. In addition to prevention, it's important to remember that malaria is treatable. It's important to treat malaria as soon as you get the symptoms. Treatment is done using a world-class anti-malarial drug or therapy called artemisinin combination therapy, that's ACT. These are things that we're just saying, we're just reminding you stuff that you know. If you listen to this show,
you can do it.
These are the things that you already know about malaria. But remember, it's important to follow this. All right? Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Back to the conversation about credibility of elections and citizen participation and citizen agency and what Mule was calling political education. How do we get the citizens more engaged around the entire process of elections, but from a citizen agenda point of view? Because we can argue today that citizens are engaged in the electoral process today, as we speak. There's already conversations about what's going to happen in 2022, the succession, who's likely to take part, who's likely to be the candidate for the presidency in our local areas. So-and-so has served their 2 terms in Machakos, so who's going to be the next governor? Those conversations are already happening and citizens are engaged. But in my opinion, and we've even discussed this and I think we are sort of in agreement, the conversation is not coming from what is it that I want to see in the next leadership. It is so who is aligning, who is going to come, how much money do they have, how much money is going to be spent in the next election. That's where it just goes south. How do we get this shifted so that the citizen is actually engaging with, this is my agenda?
In my view, the initiative has started on the right foot because they are talking about dialogue and having the regional dialogues. Those dialogues actually should go to the lowest place. And the narrative, I hope is, I hope those dialogues are based on a proper political narrative. That you see here we've discussed and we've managed to get to the heart of the issue, including talking about what citizens expect around elections. Elections are a economic opportunity for a large section.
Yep.
For another section, they want to talk about it, but they are so disaffected they won't engage. For others, everyone has different interests. So this dialogue has to go down. He's then told us something very disturbing, that old habits are coming back. Old bad habits. And this links to the discussion we were having earlier with CS Matiang'i talking about we are ready, the security forces, because they've seen the trend. So their intent to keep the force, keep the peace through the use of force. So this is also part of the discussion that has to go there. I think the missing link in the citizen agency and in this conversation is one, the rallying call to citizens. After this conversation, I wish he had issued a rallying call and said, we need you. Get in touch with us because we need you on the ground. So the rallying call. And then the second missing link is the money. And I think, again, maybe it's time to tell citizens, we need you. Also, send M-Pesa. Send us what you have. Because Kenyans contribute. Remember during the Turkana famine?
Kenyans for Kenya.
Yes, Kenyans for Kenya raised, was it 90 million?
Yep.
In as the span of a week.
Yep.
So that is the kind of audacity we need, that kind of campaign where media needs to be brought on board and told, let us save this election, let us push back. Maybe the very last link is those who have violated, because we are waiting for the institutions to sanction. But citizens can also sanction.
Yeah.
The red card. There was a red card campaign. Maybe red card sounds too foreign, but we need a list. There was violence here. These were the perpetrators.
And this is who is being brought to book.
Or these are the people who were in this violent situation. Because you look at the political leaders there, you might encourage citizens, let us blacklist them. So let us do, I think that is what is missing in this campaign. And I'm hoping that can be brought. We have to do things differently.
I think also there must be louder and more consistent engagement, because I believe that the engagement comes out in cycles, pushes, and then it shuts down for some time, then it comes back. And then you start to see a lot of this engagement around an election. And for me, I think the work, if you ask me, work that needs to be done to change the course of the election that's coming up next year cannot start now. It must have started a long time ago.
Yeah.
To have people engaged now and say that they're going to change the course of an election, it will literally take a miracle from heaven for it to happen, because you only have 12 months. This is something that needed to have been ingrained in the minds of people. Consistent messaging, because look at messaging that has worked anywhere in the world. It has been consistent, and it has been coming out in doses that people can then consume and then start to use to change their thinking. Right now, before people come out and give money, their mindset has to change. Somebody can give you 100 shillings today and then go back to doing whatever they're doing.
They have to feel invested.
They have to feel that something.
So they can also,
more work has to be
absolutely
done.
I think we need to continue.
Yes.
It's with the message and celebrating the wins. Look, when Okiya Mtata gets a win in the courts, we see citizens celebrating and saying, yes, that was impunity that has been stamped on.
Yes.
When BBI got the win at the High Court, there was a lot of celebration. And people looked back and said, yeah, we liked the people that went to court. We liked what they did. Now, can you imagine if you actually put the faces to this victory and said, these are
the
ordinary citizens. When Njoroge Konyo is not a cabinet secretary, is not when Njoroge Konyo is Njoroge Konyo, Jerotitsei is Jerotitsei, and the others. And this is, they decided to come together to go to court, and they got this. Now, we need your support. We need your support to defend this win. We need your support to defend this victory. These guys are going to bring the professors and the senior council, and they're going to pay a lot of money from our taxpayers' budget. But we need your support as citizens to make sure that we defend this win. And we continue that conversation like that. So that we celebrate the victories, and that changes that narrative of nothing can happen. Because we can really see, we actually went to court, we got this. We went to court, we saw a president being told, you cannot just wake up today and decide that you create an office. We went to court and we saw the parliament being told, you can't just unilaterally make your own law without consulting the other upper house. All those victories highlight them. Fantastic. And that carries us now forward and says, yeah. If I participate, I'm likely to see the result like we saw the other time.
Stop focusing on the negative and discouraging and disincentivizing people. I think coming from yourselves as communication experts, what this campaign needs is a strong communication arm. Because obviously, that's likely to be missing. A lot of time, because of resource constraints, media, civil society will do a lot of work, but then the media component is a press release.
Yeah.
It's not messaged. It's not consistent.
Yeah.
So that communication aspect needs to be given emphasis. And I think the other thing that needs to happen if this campaign is really going to pick, on top of those ideas, is the volunteerism. Because if you look at Obama's win, even if you look at the Democratic Party, the elections in America, and you look at Stacey Abrams and the kind of being able to turn red state to blue, the number of people who put in their time. I know Kenya, our socioeconomic is different, but maybe it's this middle class we are saying that's asleep, that can really afford to volunteer. Because middle class is maybe paycheck to paycheck, but it's not hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And we have our Nyamachoma weekends, we have our downtimes that we can afford to say, I'll take one week, one Saturday or one weekend a month to just put my time in.
Yeah.
And a professional coming in to put their time, one day is a lot. Because this is a professional. They're well skilled, they can turn really an agenda.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to add that to this kind of initiative, because I think it's in the right place, thinking is well guided, but we need to move the citizens.
It's moving it to the next step. Because like he said, voters engaged on voting. Voters engage on registering. Today, IEBC runs a campaign. We are doing voter registration. Young people who have never held a voter's card before are going to come out to register. And it's because they have grown to know that there is something called voting and there's an importance of voting and all. We will see all those people coming on the elections day, queuing, long queues to participate in casting their ballot. And on the queue, they'll be knowing, you guys support this candidate, we support this candidate. They'll not be fighting, they'll just be, we are going to see whether our numbers are more than yours. And then they sit back and they're observing, okay, so how are our votes counted? Now, how do we engage them to feel empowered? Because I want to go back to that point. We have a constitution that says power is with the people. But you have a population that says, that thinks power is with the person at the top. And that has not yet come through to us. That actually,
it's unfortunate because all of the systems that you
still
relate with are giving the power to the individual. And I keep going back to that whole issue. Political parties, for example, political parties are not issue-based or ideology-based. It's based on an individual who's going to come and rally together. So even from the beginning, from the inception of this political process, it has been given to the individual. The power has been given to the individual. Instead of the process through which individuals will be in, the process through which societies will be liberated, it's given to an individual. So you can imagine, from the smallest unit of a political process, which is the political party, it has already given power to the individual. So you go higher and higher and higher up, and it's still the individuals as the center of the focus. So that needs to be, it has to be decongested at that level. And I think political parties it's a duty right now to say, we need to go back to the beginning, building blocks, and build this thing up to where in which it's supposed to be. It should not be the individuals. It should not be.
Remember what City keeps saying, that political parties are not democratic.
No.
And that is the structure of how they're organized. There's somebody who...
But they're supposed to
There
be.
should be.
They
A
should.
political
In
party
law,
is a construct of democracy.
There should be.
It's supposed to be.
Theoretically, it's supposed to be democratic and all. And then you look at the practices within a political party, and you see then there's the emergence of a power block that wants to run everything else. And it's upon the members to realize that we cannot just sit back and expect that because we're in a political party, it's by definition democratic. No, it's the people who will demand that democracy. It's the people who will exercise that democracy in a political party.
Yeah.
Kenya, our political parties are individuals, right?
I think,
we now have UDA. UDA has existed as a different entity, but we didn't even know about it. Now we know it because Ruto, UDA. Before that, what was that other party with the horn? URP had existed before. Ruto, URP. TNA had existed. When Uhuru decamped from KANU, we started seeing TNA. It's all about individuals, and we just keep following there instead of saying, okay, so this is what I support you, Wanjiru, yes, but these are my demands.
Yeah,
these are my conditions for support.
Yeah, in our emerging democracy, because we have to remember that we are still struggling towards our democracy. And this whole negotiation is about, are we moving forward or are we staying back in the ethnic enclaves? So the beneficiaries of the enclaves, our hegemonic leaders, need to keep us back under their control.
Yep.
So we need to look at political parties as a key vehicle for that democratization process. And so it's part of the struggle. So that's why I was saying it's how we spin this narrative. So rather than talking about lack of democracy in political parties, it's really just saying we are struggling to grow our democracy. What do we do? And that's why we need the citizen agency. There was a thinking some time back that we need to get more Kenyans, more professionals, more regular citizens to take an interest in their political party and to demand the democracy. So that again is another campaign. That's a way to get in and upset the apple cart. Of course, if political parties are cobbled together, prior to elections and then after that abandoned.
They're just vehicles.
They are vehicles.
They
are vehicles for the ethnic, economic hegemony or interests. So tukombali sana, and maybe the strategy that has been picked by the national national dialogue campaign or credible elections campaign is a good one, which is focused on protecting the ballot in the first instance, and then work towards the other things. Like Mule said, we're not going to win all in 2022, but we want to look at what are the things that we can secure. And I think one of the things we must secure is at least the credibility of the ballot.
Of the vote.
Yeah.
Like you said very many times today on the show, the citizens of the Republic have been pushing for, more inclusivity, for a government that is responsive to them for a long time. We have pushed, we've been pushing, we haven't received what we need yet, and we cannot get tired. And that's why today's proverb says, anayetaka hachoki na akichoka keshapata. Anayetaka hachoki na akichoka keshapata. So we cannot get tired now until we get it. And we've got to stay the cause. Thank you for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have one of our listeners also in the show. Yegon will be here with us, in addition to Wajiro Gekonyo and Nduoko and Eric Latif. Have a lovely day. You have music until 11, and then Sugar and Spice comes thereafter. Becky says, Mombasa Road Construction has decided the Situation Room shall have a soundtrack. Oh, you can hear it. Oh.
Every day at around the same time,
Yes.
it starts.
Have a lovely day, folks. It's now 10 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Leah Ndegwa has told the appeal court that the High Court was wrong on its interpretation on whether the President has the power under the Constitution to initiate a bill. He said the 5-judge bench would have put into consideration the provision of the Constitution that every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend or repeal any legislation.
What made the Justice of the Superior Court to declare the President of that right of equality before the law? Could it have been the intimidation of